Begin with our reports on the #end bad governance protests happening across Nigeria, from the commercial capital of Nigeria, Lagos State, as well as the capital of the country, Abuja, all the way to Jos and Maiduguri, Borno State. Across the country, Nigerians have come out to demonstrate and ask for an end to bad governance with the #end bad governance, already trending on social media as well. And we're going to be patching you up and giving you more updates as it continues to unfold across the nation with situation on ground. We have all of our reporters live scattered across the country, from Bernard Akede at Lekki Toll Gate in Lagos, Nigeria, here to Ni Omoni and Marsha Onoye, who is at the Gani Fawemi Park, as well as Emmanuel Bogudu and Joshua Imarai, who is in Abuja as well.
So much happening from around the country, from the north up until here in Lagos. We also understand that there has been some situations involving tear gas being fired. We also understand that some protesters have refused to go into the Gani Fawemi Park here in Lagos, except the CP stays with them in case of any issues. We're going to be taking a listen in on them and also look-see to see the situation as it unfolds there. But across the country, and just as you have been, Judith, bringing it to us since, we have had instances of even fires in Yoruba State. One instance of mass transit buses being set ablaze by the angry protesters. We're hoping that there wouldn't be more of that. But we continue to bring you the instances from across Nigeria, and especially here in Lagos, where we are at. Earlier, I saw you talking with Akede from the toll gate from earlier.
Oh, absolutely.
The situation there seemed rather cool.
Yeah, it seems rather cool, but that is because of the presence that we saw there. We saw, he said that there were water cannon trucks as well as ammo trucks there. You can see the police trucks and the pickup vans there as well. He also noted that there were protesters who came out to try to protest, but they were dispersed immediately with tear gas. There were tear gas cannon fired at them, dispersing them, and the officials, security officials and agencies who were there said that they cannot converge at the Lekki toll gate. Nowhere else is allowed except for the Gani Fawemi Park. That's a designated point of protest. He also noted that earlier they saw anti-protesters, and those were protesters who were against the #end bad governance protest, and were pro-Tinubu protests, who were saying to the protesters that they didn't want them to protest there. Also, he noted that there were some officials who were in the NURTW uniforms, and they came to assess the area and also left as well. So you can see the visuals there up on your screen. Now, also, similar situation happened at Ojota. Marsha Onoye, our correspondent, was there as well, and said that they noted that some NRU TW officials or members who were in the uniforms as well, they were there. They didn't let the protesters protest or perform or even demonstrate their rights, and they stopped them. So it's very interesting when we're seeing instances like this, and it begs to ask the question about freedom of expression and assembly. If you're saying that they have a right to protest, why then give designated areas for them to protest? And they're afraid, rightfully so. They say they cannot protest in those places. They are afraid for that they are going to be taken advantage of, or something horrible is going to happen to them, especially in Abuja. When we spoke to Emmanuel Bogudu, he said that the protesters, they were dispersed when they tried to go to the Eagle Square. They were dispersed when they were trying to go to the 3 court arms area, which is where you have the seat of office, the House of Assembly, as well as the Secretariat, the National Secretariat. But they were dispersed and asked not to protest except at the National Stadium. So what gives, Ms.
Well, I wouldn't know exactly in detail, but there were designated places that were stipulated for the protests, even across Nigeria, not just here in Lagos. There was a very slow start to the protest from this morning. One would think that it wasn't going to happen. But then again, it started to build up as members, one and many started to come together to perhaps maybe express themselves. At the Lagos Gani Fawemi Park, however, the instance of the protesters not wanting to go in because they, first of all, feared for their lives, not knowing exactly what to expect with the grass being high and all. We saw while Nee was there bringing us a report about the fact that they were only just moaning, what's the word now, cutting the grass and all of that. It seems like this is not going to be ending anytime soon.
That's a question I asked earlier
today.
as well.
How long? There are also questions regarding, in all of this, in quote, mess, where would the word dialogue come? How would we be able to get the attention of the youth, the government is saying, so that we can actually begin to dialogue? Plenty of talk from before now about the facelessness of the protesters, but I understand that there have been certain organizations that have made themselves known and also have given demands. I think we have a couple of those demands here, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to read some of them out from these bodies that are out there today making their grievances known to the government. Apparently, they're still asking for the reduction in electricity tariffs, the reduction in the petrol pump price to less than 200 naira, they say, and also the escalating food prices also has to be addressed, is what they're asking for. Even with the restrictions, it seems to be leaving the designated zones for the protests. That's what we're seeing now in Abuja with the tear gas situation. I think that was along the Asokoro area. We saw that there were plenty of protesters there that were being tear gassed by the authorities. And we also understand that protests in Bauchi was disrupted as the police fired tear gas at demonstrators, saying that they were becoming unruly. There were pictures from there as well. And there were reports of anti-protesters in Abuja who reportedly came in 10 buses. No one knows exactly who organized them or, what their main aim was. But we'll fill you in with the details as we continue to bring you all the information that we get here on News Central with our reporters out there bringing us all the information that we need to know. I hear that we have a guest currently.
We do have a guest. They'll be joining us live. They will be talking to us about the protests and what their thoughts are on the protests so far. Joining us via video chat is Dr. Lloyd Oku, and he joins us all the way from Abuja. We'll also be having an analyst also join us as well. Dr. Lloyd F. Oku, he's the president and CEO of Nadeco USA. He's joining us all the way from Abuja. We also have Prince Francis Chilaka, a political analyst, who will be joining us on the course of the conversation. Very good afternoon to you, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon, Dr. Lloyd.
Good
we understand we
afternoon,
only have
Lloyd.
you at the moment. Dr. Lloyd, Abuja, the situation seems to be very different from what we have here in Lagos. Could you give us first-hand information exactly what the temperature is like in the country's capital?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me again. First and foremost, I want you to know that the protest is not only for young people. I joined the protest. I'm not particularly young, but I joined the protest. Although when the canisters of tear gas were thrown at me, I was the last to run because I couldn't run. So it's very hot here. It's just what I expected, that the government is going to do all within its reach to frustrate the Nigerian people, to stop them from expressing themselves. A protest is not a sporting activity. It's not. You're not going to send them to the stadium. It seems to me the federal government just sees the protesters as gladiators. Go to the stadium and display there. That's basically what they were saying when they told us to go to the stadium. So it's a slap in the face. But let me tell you this though. Day one, I'm very impressed with what Nigerians have done. They came out en masse. The place was littered with young people brandishing green leaves and white T-shirts, which, as you know, symbolize peace. And they were in good spirit. Let's see what the second day looks like, because as they dispersed us, the young people probably went to regroup, and the planners they would find a way to come back. And there is a danger here. Electoral process has failed Nigeria in terms of bringing about the needed and the necessary changes. One of the ways for the Nigerian people to express themselves is only through protests. And if you block this protest, it means that the Nigerian people would therefore resort to any means necessary to express themselves. So that's where I see a danger looming. The government thinks because it has the power to stop the protest that it can do so with impunity. If they continue to do that, because as we were leaving, I saw young people now with stones. Because, they say, well, if we cannot protest peacefully, then, we will protest in any way we can.
Dr. Lloyd, do you think that was a response to the way they were dispersed? And to add to that, I'd like you to also tell, since you were there in person, exactly how you, suggest to the authorities how they can attend to these cases of perhaps maybe unruly protesters so it doesn't escalate even or devolve even further. So are you saying that they have been dispersed in Abuja?
Yeah, they have been, dispersed. Some moved to this CBN area, and the rest of them moved to the, periphery. As I was leaving, because taxis were not allowed to come in, so I had to walk. As I was leaving, I met a lot of those kids around the CBN, just, looming around. So I think these young people should be allowed to express themselves peacefully. I think that's what the government needs to do. Government has two main duties: to protect lives and property. And if they cannot protect the protesters, it means they have failed in one of their major duties.
Now, Dr. Lloyd, I have to ask, right? One of the main concerns from this administration has been that this will devolve into a brutal, or should I say, violent protest, and so to that they have limited or designated points where the demonstrations and protests can take place. And to make a case for them, at the risk of playing devil's advocate here, do they have? Do you think that this is fair? Are they looking out for the citizens by picking out strategic locations or locations at all for them to demonstrate? So it doesn't dissolve into chaos.
It is not right. Listen, in Washington, D.C., the place designated for people to protest is right in front of the White House. Because the essence of a protest is for the government to see the people, to have the visuals of the people, to know that the people have taken the pains to come out and tell them that they are in pain, that they are hungry, that they are suffering. When you banish these young people whose main aim is to tell you that they are angry, and you ask them to go to a stadium, you have completely defeated the very essence of a protest. A protest is not a social gathering where you go and tell them, go here and go there. Once you tell them that they must leave that area and go to some designated place, and listen, the designated place is far away in stadium where there are no government offices. So basically, they are telling them, just go to where you belong, go and do whatever. It's consistent with what Senator Akpabio, the Senate President, said. While you are protesting, we will be busy eating. Basically, we're going to banish you somewhere. And who knows whether the next day they come, they're going to tell them to go, the designated area is the Sambisa Forest. Go there, that's where you've been asked to go and protest. So you know clearly that the government is very disingenuous. They have all these tricks. And these kids, remember now that during the NSAS, the kids I keep referring to them as kids, the young people were not violent. It was the government that instigated the violence. What the young people did was in response to what the government security agencies did. And that's exactly what they're doing now. They've borrowed a page from what happened during the NSAS, because they know that they can easily anger the young people by shooting canisters at them, so that when they respond or retaliate, then they could see that as an excuse to unleash mayhem on them. The youth will not relent. I pray they do not relent. This protest needs to continue. We need to tell the government that we are the people and we have the right to hold them accountable.
So, Dr. Lloyd, coming off of what you just said regarding how to address the youth so they don't get even much more angry, I asked the question from before what your suggestions should be to the authorities regarding how to handle the situation. In Potiskum, we have information that they set ablaze already mass transit buses. I'm not sure if this was provoked or not, but if this is a situation in Potiskum, you can imagine that the youths might continue in this vein in other places. What is your suggestion to the authorities on how they can handle the situation, having in mind and noting that these are very exuberant youth out there on the street?
You know, I said earlier that in Washington and many capital cities of the West, there are areas where people are allowed to go and protest. I gave you an example. The one in Washington is called Lafayette Square. If you Google Lafayette Square, it's right in front of the government house. The White House, so that people can go there and be seen, by the government. So the first suggestion is the government should allow these individuals to express themselves. The country belongs to them. They have the right to express themselves. Open the roads for them. Take away all those razor-sharp barbed wires that they've installed all over the place that I saw, and allow these young people to protest peacefully. The security agencies can line up, on the street to make sure that they are okay. Okay? And now, the next question that we must ask is, why are these young people protesting in the first place? Are they crazy? Are they mad? They're not mad. There's a reason they are protesting. So in response to your question, the government needs to go back to the root cause of why they are protesting and see how they can resolve some of those things. And once those things are resolved, these people would disappear. The Nigerian people will be happy that this government is doing all within its reach. Now, let me tell you why most Nigerians are very unhappy. Yes, the economy is bad everywhere, and the government is saying that it's doing its best. But when they look behind the scenes, they know that the government is not doing anything. The government is rather enriching itself. The members of this administration are rather enriching themselves, buying luxury cars and flying around in private jets and stuff like that. So Nigerians are not stupid. And that's why they're coming out to protest. What I expected the president to do was to have a national broadcast and address the issues one by one. But you see, his political arrogance does not allow him to do any of those things. So until he realizes that this country belongs to the people, it will continue to be the way it is. And I don't blame him. The reason I don't blame him is they have always taken the Nigerian people for granted. It's always been like this. They cry, and nothing happens. The judiciary is in his pocket. The National Assembly is in his pocket. So he's basically saying, well, you can't do anything, we can just play you as a football and get away. But this might not be exactly the same, because the resolve I saw outside, I didn't wait for anyone to tell me what happened. I went there myself to see what happened. And the turnout was very good in Abuja. Very, very good for day one. And now that the young people have seen that a lot of people showed up day one, there will be more people, because I think they were a bit skeptical or hesitant to come out, not knowing what was going to happen to them if they did. But now that they have come out and seen that the place was loaded with protesters, tomorrow will be stronger. And it may even be more than 10 days. I suggest that they should continue to do it until the government listens to them.
Doctor, from our earlier conversation, one thing is clear. The demands is overdue, but the question is, can 10 days fix it? And can it even kickstart what will be hopefully a restructuring of the entirety of our governance? But we'll come back to this conversation, but we quickly have to go on a short break. You're watching our live coverage for the hashtag End Bad Governance protest that is now continued across the nation. We'll be back after this break. Stay with us. And continue to our live coverage of the hashtag End Bad Governance that has continued across the nation, from the cities, or rather from the nation's commercial capital, Lagos, all the way to the capital of the nation, Abuja, down to north central Jos, and all the way to northeast Borno State, and of course south Nigeria, Delta State. Our correspondent has scattered every day, everywhere, bringing you live updates of the protest as it unfolds. Now, before the break, we're having a conversation with Dr. Lloyd Ukwo, who is the spokesperson and CEO for NADECO, and he joined us earlier. We've been talking about the protests. He was part of the protesters in Abuja who have now been dispersed and asked to go to a national stadium. He's also been talking about the youth, or the younger generation, who have been calling for change, a much-needed change. A situation is now dire. Doctor, before the break, you were saying that a change must be had, and they have a right, or rather the youth have a right, and the younger generation have a right to a better governance. But I must have to ask you, is 10 days enough? I've asked this earlier, and I'm saying this particularly because the demands that is of this protest is, number one, a reversal of fuel price. We saw over 100% increment of the price of fuel. Can that change overnight in 10 days? And would that have effect on our economic, the economy for the nation?
Well, certainly 10 days would not be enough to change the trajectory of this government. I'm sure that the protesters know this, that 10 days would not be enough. But this is the beginning of what to come. This is the first major people's resistance. I would say the second. The first being the 2023 election, which was foiled. In a democracy, you use electoral process to send message to leaders. If that fails, you use protest. So we are dealing with the second one, and of course, it seems to me that is the last leg. Protest is the last way of telling the government, your position. And let me say this very quickly, that the key to fixing this country lies with these young people on the streets. Simply. That's the truth. Because it is this way of the way they're expressing themselves, 1, 2, 3 to 10 days, 15, 20, 30 days, that the government will see the level of seriousness and then try to make amends, even if not meeting all the demands, but come to a certain point, which will jumpstart the agitation to repair the country. What Nigerians are simply asking for, the demonstration you see, what they're asking for basically is to restructure the country. What is restructuring? Restructuring is repair the country. Make sure you have major institutional reforms so that the country would run well. I'm sure that if the government knew the consequences of the removal of the subsidy, if they thought it well, they would have put so many cushions in place so that the subsidy removal would not have been as perilous as it is now. So not caring about what was going to happen, in my viewpoint, is still consistent with the way our leaders take us as unserious people. Otherwise, what they would have done was to sit down and say, listen, if we do this, this is going to happen. How do we make sure that we ameliorate the situation so that it doesn't cause so much harm to the people? But today, people are unable to feed. The tribalism and religion that they normally deploy, doesn't know hunger. It doesn't know hunger. And that's why you're seeing people on the streets. Ordinarily, Christians will be told this is a Muslim protest, or Muslims will be told this is a Christian protest. Igbos will be told this is a Yoruba protest, and vice versa. And then you see them falling off. But now, hunger doesn't know Yoruba, hunger doesn't know Igbo, Hunger doesn't know Muslim, it doesn't know Christian. It strikes everyone. As we speak now, I'm hungry. So nobody can stop hunger from dictating how you react.
Dr. Lloyd, just wanted to bring to your attention, we've got disturbing videos from Kano. We'll be getting the exact information on exactly what these visuals are about in just a minute, and we'll let you guys know. We are not exactly sure exactly why this has, devolved into this situation, but we can see fires and people running, and this is the Nigerian Communications, I think, Digital Industry Park, if I'm not mistaken. We'll get the information right and bring to you. But Dr. Lloyd, I wanted to come back on you with something that you said earlier regarding the body language of the government, specifically the arrogance of the president. You used those words. Now, what should we expect from President Tinubu exactly? Is it too early for him to come out to address the nation, or is it too late? Many say that perhaps maybe he should have done this from weeks before, or maybe at least days before the protest. We did not know exactly whether he's going to come tonight and address the nation. So what's your take on his absence, it would seem, in this situation, as we haven't heard anything from the president?
It's not too early. It's certainly getting late. Because if you take a cue from what happened in Kenya, Ruto came back after the fact, when the damage had already been done. I expected that this administration would have learned a little bit from what happened in Kenya, because history tells you that this type of activities are usually copied from country to country. The revolution, American Revolution and the French Revolution, they were all because one happened here, and they said, wow, it happened here and was successful. We're going to use it as well to help ourselves. So this administration should see what happened in Kenya and know that we are heading in that direction. And they should also know that he, as a person, cannot stop Nigerians from expressing themselves. He cannot. He will try, but he cannot. What is happening in Kano, regrettably so, is probably as a result of the actions that were meted out to them by the security agencies. So my advice to Mr. President is to come out to the Nigerian people. You are the leader of the country. Come out to the Nigerian people and address them and tell them what you are doing or what you're about to do and what you've done, and tell them to remain calm and make some concessions and make some genuine promises, and tell them that you're going to restructure the country and put a date certain and say, beginning with this, we're going to start to reform the police. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And once you do that, then you see that Nigerian people, they're humans. They will take you very seriously and know that you respect them. But if you stay in the comfort of Azuro,
Doctor, very quickly, the visuals that is now showing on your screen there, we're going to pull up this visual shortly, is from the Nigerian Communications Commission's, which is the Digital Industrial Park. It was recently just opened, and I'm sure about weeks ago from launch. You can see it's now been ravaged there. You can see young Nigerians, so it's gone in there. You see them with chairs and appliances, as well as furniture that is from that building. They have gone in, vandalized the building, and you can see them running in and out. You can also see them at the road divide there, the metals there, pulling it off the ground. You can see that the population there is mostly of young Nigerians. The scene you're seeing on your screen there is all the way from Kano, the capital of Kano State there, where you have the young people at the Nigerian Communications Commission, the Digital Industrial Park. We did have a tweet earlier. We're going to try to pull up that tweet. It was from the new commissioner there, Dr. Bosun Tijani, or Mr. Bosun Tijani, who spoke about this and said that it was very saddening to see the scenes of them going in and vandalizing and taking out and stealing property, furniture and appliances from the building.
We can also see some projectiles being hurled there. Not exactly sure who they're targeted at, but Don't even know exactly what might have started this situation, but there seems to be fire there as well, as we can see some smoke burning there. But from Abuja, we are going to be going to our correspondent Idong Joseph, who is live there right now. But let's take a very short break before that, and then when we get back, we'll be finding out the state of things in Abuja. Stay tuned. Welcome back. It's still the live coverage of events unfolding here in Nigeria with the End Bad Governance protest across Nigeria, from Lagos to Abuja, the north, and all across the nation. We have been bringing reports in from our reporters that have been stationed in these places, and also visuals, as we can see from before, from Kano. That was a very sad situation there. Not exactly sure how that began, or perhaps maybe there was something to instigate it. We're still working on that information, and we'll be bringing that to you shortly.
In the meantime, we have Bernard Akede, who's on standby at the Lekki toll gate in Lagos. We'll also be patching you over also to Abuja with our correspondent Idong Joseph. But first, let's speak to Idong Joseph. Idong, well done and a very good afternoon to you. What's the latest where you're at Abuja? But first, where are you exactly in Abuja?
Good afternoon, Judith. I'm actually at the Nigeria checkpoints. And this place is a border community between Nasarawa State and the FCT. And coming in here, we noticed several things. We noticed that the streets here were littered with sticks, burnt sticks, and tires.
And do you know who were the persons who burnt them? Was it the protesters? Was it anti-protesters? Or was it just the residents? How did that happen?
Okay. The protests here, I believe, because we've asked several people here, and they say the protest is in support of the End Bad Government protest. But there's something different we noticed at this location here. When we were coming, we saw security personnel in their van roving around, and we noticed that they started shooting sporadically in the air. And trying to know why they did this, we saw that some of the protesters here were carrying things that we believe are not belong to them, meaning that those things were looted from the properties of other people. And in order to ensure that properties are not being looted.
All right. Well,
so security personnel here.
Idong, many thanks. We're going to come back to you on updates on that, but we appreciate you, Idong Joseph, there from Inyanya, Abuja, a border town. But we switch gears now back to Lagos, where we have Bernard Akede on standby at the Lekki toll gate, just off the Lekki Ekpe Expressway. Bernard, again, well done so far. You've been there since yesterday and today. What's the latest? We'll try to put Bernard, try to connect we'll try to connect him on as we realize that he's having some technical glitches there. We'll try to bring that report with Bernard Akede, who's been there since yesterday, covering the proceedings of what would look like today. And what he said with all of his reports has been the heavy presence of security agents. He saw an ammo tank, water cannon trucks, as well as several pickup trucks as well, and also the Black Maria, so to speak.
I will tell you something, that was to be expected, especially noting that that is a very big vantage point for protesters from the past. And SARS, that's exactly the main spot where everything happened. However, I'm very interested with I think we have Bernard on right now. Bernard Akede, if you are there, do let us know. Good afternoon, Bernard.
Yes, I am here. I can hear you. I can hear you, Mazino.
Fantastic.
Good afternoon, I believe.
Yes, it is afternoon. Well, you might not know because you've been there since yesterday, but thank you very much for stellar reporting since yesterday. However, what's happening now as we're beginning to move closer into the evening? Is there any change from the reports that you brought us from earlier? We remember you telling us about the presence of security agencies, the water cannon, and of course the police, whom we saw you with having a discussion with from earlier with your cameraman. So what's the situation currently?
All right, now the situation currently is, well, again, I think this basically just explains the power of numbers when it comes to protests and, well, demonstrations around the country and particularly in Lagos. Earlier, I did mention that at the beginning of the day, there were very few protesters who started the movement here. And then when they got more, their voices got larger, and that's why they were able to mobilize and chant songs, and then the police had to disperse the crowd. Now, after that, they started coming in ones and twos. They could hardly do anything, and the police could easily outnumber those 1 and 2 persons that came. There was one person who came here who said he was a singer. He came with a big speaker and was chanting some kind of song here. And without even noticing, one of the police officers, the police officer who actually accosted him is going to pass the camera very soon. You'll see him. He has a black jacket. If he crosses the camera, you'll notice. He just came, took out the speaker. He seized the speaker. That's the police officer passing my back right now. He seized the speaker from this so-called musician. The musician went into his vehicle and still sat down there waiting. And then they came and I think took his car keys. Luckily for him, his vehicle was still running. The engine was still running, so he drove off. He was the only one here. He was more like a lone ranger, and that's why it was easy, to challenge him that way. But now we hear that there are 3 persons in that black Mariah behind me right there. We had to charge our equipment at some point, and then when we got back, we saw that they were taking, or that they had taken 3 persons into the black Mariah. I'm not sure who they are yet. We've not been able to go close to interview them. We don't know if we'll be given the chance to do that, but we can confirm that there are 3 persons in there. The questions we asked the police officers, who these people are, why they were apprehended. The only answers we got is that these people also came and tried to protest, but the police officers apprehended them and put them in the black Mariah.
Bernard, speaking about numbers, like you've just noted that these people were slim pickings for the police because they had no number. Do you think that any time in the near future there might be groups of people who might come to that area in no time?
So the Lekki toll gate, of course, we know that it's a place for it's a convergence point when it comes to protests in Lagos, of course, for obvious reasons. Now today, because of the situation or the arrangement of today's protest, we had more numbers in Ojota and Ikeja area and very few in Lekki. I am predicting, I may not be perfect, but I am predicting that if this lingers on, we may see a movement away from the mainland down here. But that's just my prediction, and that's just me. However, there may be more challenge for protesters gathering here because, first of all, we have the presence of the police officers on ground here. And then, as we saw earlier, we saw some men wearing uniforms of the National Union of Road Transport Workers, NURTW, who came here and said they want to protect this area, that if people want to protest, they should go to the designated areas that the court had given, but they should not protest here. So it's looking like there will be more pushback from here. But again, I'm predicting that if this lingers on beyond today, inspiration from what happened today on the mainland may just make people decide to come out in more numbers here. Or maybe the people from the mainland today may decide to mobilize and come down here tomorrow or in days to come. Nobody knows.
Well, Bernard, many thanks. We appreciate you for your coverage. It's been just stellar from yesterday all the way to today. We're going to come back to you on more there. But again, well done and many thanks to you. You're watching the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, End Bad Governance protest live coverage since all through the entirety of today, bringing you update from our correspondents scattered across the geopolitical zones in Nigeria. We're going to a short break, and we come back on the other side. There's more update. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. And welcome back. You're watching our live broadcast of the hashtag #EndBadGovernance that have now started across the geopolitical zones in Nigeria, all the way since this morning to now. What started out as a very slow start of the protest has now picked up, especially in the north, where we have seen footages of not just rowdiness, but also looting as well. In Kano State, we saw some youths there converging or going into the Nigerian Communications Commission, the Digital Industrial Park. They're taking the appliances and furnitures as well. We also seen dispersed protesters in the capital of the nation, Abuja, and also here in Lagos, Nigeria. There's also cases where protesters started from Ikeja and also been marched all the way down to Ojota. And Lekki Tollgate seems to be free at this time. There are no protesters, but we're going to continue to bring you update with our correspondents as they are scattered across the nation.
We also have updates that allegedly there are 4 protesters in the pool of their own blood and they appear not moving. This is in Maiduguri. That's where that information is coming in from. There's also update on protesters now making their way to Asokoro area of Abuja. Also understand that there's heavy deployment of security operatives at the entry gates of the presidential villa, just in case it escalates. We'll continue to bring you these snippets of information regarding the protest as it goes. The hashtag has been all through End Bad Governance, and we seem to see this graphic on most of the placards that have been carried by the protesters across the country. However, one wants to ask, or needs to ask, the uniformity of these protests. How is it being conducted in Lagos against how it's being conducted in the north, maybe Abuja or in Maiduguri, as we're getting all of these informations in? We have our guest with us now.
Yes, we do. But in the meantime, we understand that Marshall Onoye, our correspondent and reporter, he is live in Lagos. Marshall, are you on? He's at Ojota, Lagos State. Marshall, a very good afternoon to you. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, please go ahead. What's the update at Ojota at this time?
Well, you just had the protesters who had converged earlier on at the Unifying Park here dispersed at the given time. Earlier on, just about when it was 20 minutes to the dispersal time given by the government and the court, 4 p.m., the police had advanced from the position where they were towards the crowd, towards the protesters, supposedly to alert them as to the time for dispersal. And that sort of raised some kind of commotion in the camp of the protesters, who became agitated and were also advancing towards the policemen. It was a confusing, it was a state of commotion and confusion, but that agitation from the protesters led to the policemen retreating back to their position. And as fate would have it, by 4, we had the protesters on their own, without any force, without any reminder from members of the police force, dispersed and saying they will be here again tomorrow by 7 a.m.
Marshall, you spoke about commotion from earlier after they were approached by the authorities, the police. Now, you also noted that they dispersed right at 4 p.m. without any, well, they weren't asked to leave, they just simply left and are coming back at 7 p.m. However, many ask whether this will escalate into a situation where perhaps maybe we might see protests start maybe sometime later on in the day. Have you spoken with anyone of the protesters, or have you taken a pulse of the protesters to note whether they might continue these protests even after 4 p.m.?
Well, specifically asking the question as to whether they will continue after 4 p.m., no, but they seem to, the crowd here, we had quite a number of people converge here, and to have the place this empty shows that, I mean, they seem to be compliant with the court ruling and the government's order to disperse at 4 p.m. And no, they are not returning at 7 p.m. They are returning, they are saying they would return at 7 a.m. tomorrow. So I do not see it deteriorated into any kind of crisis. I do not see them coming back to wreak havoc of any kind. I only see them complying to this order as they have just demonstrated.
Thank you.
Well, Marshall, many thanks. We appreciate you for your update. And again, well done.
Thank you, Marshall.
And our guest, Dr. Lloyd Uku, who was with us earlier, CEO Nadeco, is still on video chat. Doctor, appreciate you for just sticking with us this whole time. Let's continue the conversation, shall we? 4 p.m. the end of convergence to discontinue, and to converge for 7 a.m. tomorrow. Security measures taken by the government. Are you going to be participating for day 2 of the protest?
Yes, I will be there. Not by 7 o'clock. I'll be there a little later than that, but I will be there tomorrow.
And I mean, I have to ask, right? 4 p.m. start again the following day. Do you think that these measures are used to sort of discourage protesters so they can tire out quickly, and not to stay all night long, not to agitate them, or not to fuel them with more motivation, so to speak, to gear on? Instead, end at 4 p.m. You can resume at 7 a.m. I feel like I gotta ask you: does it seem like measures to demotivate protesters?
Yes, you must remember that the government's primary goal is to ensure, this administration's primary goal is to ensure that these protests do not hold. And if they hold, that their impact is minimized to the largest possible extent. So first and foremost, going to court to get a court order, tells you that they're out of step. You don't go to court to get a court injunction when people want to talk to you, because a protest is basically talking to the government. We want to talk to the government so that we'll be able to tell them what our problems are, and then you go and get a court order. If you want to talk to me from this time to that time, and talk to me from far away. It doesn't make sense. Tinubu himself, along with Professor Shoyinka, Pastor Bakare, Falana, and Pastor Adeboye, they all protested at some point, and nobody bothered them. Nobody told them to go somewhere to go and protest. They marched on the streets of Lagos. They, in fact, even carried a mock coffin of President Jonathan. Nobody stopped them. President Jonathan could have gone to court to get some injunction, but he didn't. He allowed Nigerians to express themselves. I think what this protest, hashtag end bad governance, is not against Tinubu personally. It doesn't say so. It says end bad governance. And so Tinubu also should be interested in ending bad governance. So what he needed to have done is to allow these people to express themselves. That would have been the first point he would have scored. From the international community, those of us who came in here to observe what was happening, we would have sent reports back that it looks like this government has improved because it's allowing people to express themselves. But we were not surprised at what is happening, getting injunctions and stopping them from doing whatever they want to do. But I want to say clearly that NADECO USA is against any type of violence. In fact, when we did our press release, we said we support the protest on the condition that the planners must ensure that it is a peaceful protest. And from what I saw today, it was supposed to be a peaceful protest. It was actually a peaceful protest. But let me tell you what I think. The government intends to incite the young people because that's the only way they will have the opportunity to use brutal force. So what they're doing now is just to anger the young people so that they will react. For instance, we condemn what the visuals you showed happening in Kano. We unequivocally condemn that. But I want to also turn on the other side and say this must have been triggered by the actions of the government. Because if they allow these kids to move on the street and protest peacefully with the green leaves they had and all of that, there probably wouldn't have been need for them to do what they're doing. We hope that this does not continue in other cities. Because you see, like I said earlier, is a digital world now. Those in Port Harcourt, those in Lagos, those in Warri would see that something was burnt in Kano, And they'll say, oh, wait a minute, we can also start burning up things. In other countries where you have protests, when the people are allowed to protest peacefully, nothing happens. You see small skirmishes where human beings, we're bound to, fight and do a few things, but you don't see them going out in mass destroying things when you allow them to protest, peacefully. So I think if you ask me now, Mr. President needs to come out as quickly as possible and address the nation. He needs to address, the nation. You cannot beat me, slap me, and tell me to go to the bedroom and cry. No, I'm crying so you see that, you did something wrong to me, but you don't want to see me, which means you don't give a damn about, the fact that I'm crying. So Mr. Tinubu needs to come out and address the Nigerian people. He needs to show respect to the Nigerian people.
On that note, Dr.
By
Lloyd,
coming out to address them and tell them, to calm down and tell them what he intends to do to make sure that the hunger would not disappear, but dissipate. But if he continues to stay where he is and listening to his advisors like Mr. Akpabio, I don't think that's going to solve the problem. He needs to come out and talk to us Nigerians and talk to the international community, because they also watch to see what is happening.
I need to ask you a question. I need us to actually take a look at these infringements. One, regarding the expression or freedom to express or freedom to protest. And then on the other hand, the government actually trying to maintain peace and order. The government has said that the reason why it's restricting these protests to specific locations is perhaps because of what happened from the last time, or at least to make sure that there are no cases of looting or violence and all of that. So these places have been stipulated for protests. On the other hand, the restrictions that are being placed on protesters regarding time and place. Now, if I can't protest, like you use the analogy of crying in your bedroom, if I can only protest crying in my bedroom, doesn't that infringe on my rights to protest? If I cannot say, oh, out in the open here, I don't want to be restricted by time or space. If I can, or if I want to protest after 4 p.m., aren't I allowed to cry? Do you think that these restrictions are infringements on the rights to protest of the youth?
I believe so. Because I said that first and foremost, this administration in the first place didn't want this protest to start. So everything they're doing now is consistent with the fact that they do not want this protest to take place. There are things they could have done to stop this protest, but they don't think that those things are necessary. They think that they can just use brutal force to stop the protest. Let me give you this very quick analogy. During the civil rights days in the United States of America, blacks were heavily discriminated against. And when certain laws were passed to allow blacks access to certain places, they put conditions on how to get those services. I gave an example earlier in the morning of the type of swimming pants that you need to access a public pool. Because they didn't want black people to go into those pools, they now prescribed certain swimming pants which they knew were too expensive for black kids to have. So if you went to use those swimming pools in the 60s, they would tell you, well, there's a law that says you can use the swimming pool, but this is how you need to be before you get into the swimming pool. It was basically tantamount to the same thing, and that's what the government is doing. Well, we are going to do the following to them to discourage the protesters. We're going to tell them, this is how you protest. This is, protest is not a 9-to-5 job where you say come in the morning and close by 4. No, it's not. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's a protest. And they have added the peaceful aspect, to it. I think the government needed to give the Nigerian young people the benefit of the doubt by saying, you are free to protest, but make sure that it's peaceful and see how the Nigerians will react. But they never gave them that chance. From what I saw today, they didn't give them that chance. And you know how the human behavior works. If you can if you can't allow me to do this thing through the door, I'll get in through the window. And so getting from the window is what we don't want to happen, you know. But if you force them not to come in from the door, they will find a way to come in because they are hungry and angry.
All right. Well, Doctor, thank you so much for your submission, and also very sincere and heartfelt submission there from you. We have one more guest joining us, who's a public affairs analyst, Chude Achike. He joins us live via video chat. Chude, many thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate you for coming on. Dr. Lloyd just said something which is very, very interesting. He said, protest is not a 9 to 5 job, in this case 7 to 4 job. What is your take on that statement, saying that protesters can only protest from 7 p.m. to 4 p.m.?
I don't know. We've not had that situation before when the authorities, or maybe themselves, the authorities of the executive, or the courts, will want to impose a modality for protest in Nigeria. That has not. We've had series of protests. If you look at the history of the political development or evolution of this country, you will see that all along the line there have been protests, all manners of protests against dictatorships, military dictatorships, against civilian governance or misgovernance. And nobody has had cause to give direction to the protesters on when they need to protest and all that. The protesters decide when they are going to protest, and protests are never done in the night or in the evening time. It's usually done in the day, in the morning hours, most especially because there's a basis for that. By the time when the weather is a bit cool and the sun is not at its zenith. So it's a period that I think favors participation in protests. And because, of course, obviously, we know the implication of having a scorching sun on you, moving under the hot sun. And so it's always been done in the early hours of the morning. And by 11, 12, energies are dissipated. But again, it depends on each protest has its own.
Do we still have you, Chude?
Protest itself. Oh, yeah. So I think it's a bad one for you to determine when, and how protesters should do their protests, confining them to specific places. But again, you will not blame the government. The government is afraid, the government is worried, and actors within the government themselves are also worried. It's a result of, we all know why this is happening. It's a result of misgovernance. It's a result of all the corruption that has taken place in this country. And so they're naturally worried about this situation getting out of control, out of hand. You're looking at a population, a youthful population that is in their tens of millions who are frustrated and angry and who have a lot of energy to expend. And so how you handle such protests, I think, will determine whether it is going to grow, it's going to be violent. Most protests in this country have always been peaceful. The motivation for such protests have always been born out of the need for people, citizens, to express their anger and their frustration with a failing, government. And so they will not go out of their way to undermine the protests that they themselves have so meticulously planned for. And so most times that protests get out of hand is simply as a result of intervention of the state through their agencies, mainly the police. Otherwise, protests work. And then even the talks that try to hijack, disrupt the protest are usually, if you look at it closely, there is the hand of government, the executive, in the activities of thugs. They encourage the thugs, they push the thugs to see whether they can intimidate protesters and scatter the protest, and undermine the protest. So on their own, if the thugs do not have any motivation, financial motivation, they themselves will not do anything about it because they are also suffering the pinch, of the hardship that people are facing. Is because some of them have been
if not all of them, have been financially induced. That's why they just go in there to try to cause problems.
Well,
so I think that Nigerians are matured enough to stage their protests, and they have done it in the past. Nobody will tell us anything new about how protests are done. Whether protests will be hijacked or not. They are never hijacked. Because the people who are doing this protest, responsible people in most cases, I know because I have been in the middle of this for several years.
Okay, then Chide, tell you what, we're going to go on a short break now, but when we get back, I'm going to be asking you questions based on what you've just talked about, the usurpation of the event itself. But let's go on a quick break, and when we come back, more from the live coverage of the End Bad Governance protests across Nigeria. We'll be back.
You're watching the hashtag End Bad Governance live coverage, the protest live coverage going on live. We've been doing this since in the morning down to this very hour, bringing you updates from all of the geopolitical zones in Nigeria. Now, before the break, we're having a conversation with a public affairs analyst at Chike Trude, who was giving us his own take on the protests so far. But we'll switch gears now to look at the economic implication on the protests, particularly with the Nigerian stock exchange, that is the NGX. And joining us is our guest from Nairametrics. And to my right here is Daniel Olujimi. He is, or rather David Olujimi, I beg your pardon. He joins us live all the way from Nairametrics. And also to my left here is Joanna Mustafa, who's also the host of Market Pulse here on News Central TV. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. It's been quite the demonstration all through all of the geopolitical zones, Abuja, Lagos, Jos, Kano. It is indeed a shutdown. We also saw, especially in Lagos, a bit of slow activity. Offices were closed, businesses was closed. And I have to ask the bigger question, this is going to affect our economic numbers, especially with the indices, especially on trading, the trading floor on the NGX. I'm going to start with the lady to my left.
All right, market activities are pretty much unaffected, right, with what's happening with the protests. Even historically with NSARS, we saw that same year, 2020, the NGX still emerged the best performing exchange, right, in Africa. So our market is not as complex as other countries, right? And even if you look at the market size compared to GDP, it's still relatively small. We have about 3 million traders out of the over 200 million people, right? Investors, right, on the NGX. So it's really not as, affected. If you look at numbers today, the market declined 0.42%. The market has been in the red for the past 9-10 days, if I'm not mistaken. So, and that's been, on the back of Dangote sell-offs, news within the banking sector with the windfall tax and all of that, investors reacting. So pretty much unaffected, if you ask me.
And I have to ask you, David, as well, looking at the unaffectedness, this is going to be a 10-day protest. This is just day one. And although it looks good from what Joanna said, would it change? You're the numbers guy. Talk to me.
It's going to change. It's definitely going to change, because the thing is, like, I was having a conversation with Joanna. We were talking about the fact that in Kenya, they had an effect on the Nairobi Stock Securities Exchange over time. In the NGX, is going to be so, because data from January to May shows that foreign participation in the NGX has increased about almost 36% now. Foreign participation. It used to be as low as 10% as of last year. Now, with the inflow with all the currency policies of the central bank governor, we've been seeing a lot of FPIs into that market. When the country is quite unstable, we are going to be seeing millions of dollars pull out of that market. So it's going to have effect. For now, I feel like the market is just saying, okay, let's see what's going on. And coupled with the fact that traders usually don't trade on the exchange floor anymore. It's not something that really happens. Most traders are remote. It started in 2020 with COVID. So now I'm saying, as it progresses, if this progresses and if the momentum increases, we're going to see definitely affect that market.
I want to ask a question that's maybe outside your wheelhouse, but you're still a numbers guy, so I'm going to ask.
Oh my God.
I was going to ask you, but here's the numbers guy. But now, there was talk about Nigeria losing billions, and I mean like hundreds of billions every single day was the protest to happen. Now we've seen the protest happening day one. It's going to go for 10 days, well, they say. How much will Nigeria lose Let's just say in the next 5 days if we continue with the protest.
So I heard that I think it was on this platform where Dr. Muda Yusuf said Nigeria is going to be losing 400. Nigeria risks losing 400 billion
each
daily.
day.
It's based on the assumption, or is based on the assertion that we have a very large informal sector. So I came out today. I came out at least to get to this place. I saw that the streets were empty. Basically, there was a lot of reduction in activities, normal informal sector activities. I cannot put a number to the exact amount of the volume of trade that goes on in the informal sector as of now. But one thing I can say is that there's going to be, we will see the effect. We all saw the effect in 2020 when everything shut down and everybody had to go to their houses. We saw the effect. We saw the effect on the economy. We saw the amount of banks are going to feel it because we have people who take cash to the bank every day. So I cannot put a cap and say we're going to lose 1.2 trillion, we're going to lose 1.5 trillion, but I know that we're going to lose money, and it's going to have its own bearish effect on the economy, especially on the informal sector.
Yeah, now I have a question for you. So seeing that when the market starts and closes Friday and then begins again on Monday, doesn't it? Now the protest is going to span over into the weekend. How much of an effect will that have on the NGX regarding Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which will pretty much no trading?
Yeah, I really don't think it's going to have as much of an effect. As he has stated, trade goes on virtually. They're not on the floor of the exchange to trade. So activities go on nevertheless, regardless, right?
Okay. Wow.
Well, I mean, with the trading nevertheless still going on, there's Saturday, there's Sunday. Monday is a big day for the markets as well. Monday is where it's opening up. People are making the trade securities are going in and out, in and out. If this continues, are we going to see a bustling on Mondays? It's just going to be. I mean, it was a slow start today.
So one thing I'll say is we're not going to see a bustling on Monday. I, like other people, are waiting to see what the president is going to be saying from today, what steps the different governments and governors are going to be taking, the security agencies, what steps they are going to be taking from Saturday, Sunday till Monday. If Saturday, Sunday shows an improved momentum, we're going to be seeing a lot of people pull their money out. We're going to be seeing investors say, oh, I think it's time to just take a break from Nigeria.
The income side of things, perhaps.
I mean, honestly, the truth of the matter is that the economy has been crying tears since this 1 year of administration. And with this protest and this demonstration that we're seeing, the question is to be asked, will investors, foreign direct investment is what we want to see come in. We want to see a change. We've been seeing a lot of pullout with, the foreign multinationals, and with a protest like this, and from what your analysis, guys, it begs to ask the question, how then are we going to pass on a good message for foreign direct investment? But lady and gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for coming on.
We should answer that during market polls.
Remember,
we asked you to answer it then. Well, thank you very much, Joanna.
Thank you
very much.
David Olujimi, he is analyst with the Nairametrics, as well as Joanne Mustafa. She is the host of the Market Pulse, which is in collaboration with Nairametrics. Join us today just to give us some more insight and in-depth at the economic end of things with the hashtag End Bad Governance. We're going on a short break. Stay with us. What started as a conversation and what started as people wanting change has now, metamorphosed and now is on the streets. It's the hashtag End Bad Governance, which is birthed out of a need for change across Nigeria. And all of the citizens, and most of the citizens across the major geopolitical zones in Nigeria are out, and they're asking for that change with the hashtag End Bad Governance. And so far, so good. The entirety of our broadcast today has been on that protest, bringing you live coverage and updates with our correspondents and reporters scattered across the country, and also all the way outside of the country in South Africa, where Bogani Zaziba, our correspondent there, brought us more update from Nigerians who joined their voice to the protest. And now to speak more on the events of today, from the start and now to the end of the protest for today, and what it might look like for day two, we're being joined by Hamzat Lawal. He is an activist and founder Connected Development, and he joins us live via video chat. Hamzat, thank you so much for joining us, and a very good evening to you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good evening, Nigerians.
Good evening, Hamzat. Hamzat, I'm going to start by asking you a question that I had initially designed for Chude, whom we had earlier. But Hamzat, I want to ask about usurpation of this event, I mean the End Bad Governance protests, and the responsibility that the government has to the protesters, and also that the protesters have to themselves. Now, everybody knows that these kinds of events, like we saw during the End SARS protests, could be taken over by unscrupulous elements. Now, due to that, there has been a curfew imposed on Borno State following an IED explosion, which resulted in the deaths of 16 people, we hear. And this decision was taken to prevent further unrest and also maintain public order. And this was by the Police Public Relations Officer for Borno State, ASP Nahum Kenneth Daso. And also, there has been a curfew imposed on Kaduna as well. As we hear, a 24-hour curfew has been imposed in Kaduna State. A police officer was reportedly shot by protesters, which led to police officers chasing protesters and shooting a young boy. And some persons are still in their office, unable to leave. And also, according to a leadership newspaper, Governor Ubasani has denied imposing curfew in Kaduna State, by the way, following the looting of government properties. Now, these informations are just simply coming to us as the broadcast goes on. So we'll continue to inform the public about that. However, now regarding the responsibility that the government has to the protesters, especially here in Lagos, the IG has told that the police do not have the manpower to help or support the protesters, to guide them. Now, for the protesters themselves, noting that these events could be overtaken by unscrupulous elements, what responsibility do they owe themselves regarding the restrictions that have been placed for time and space? Looking at it now, do these restrictions seem perhaps maybe like they were absolutely necessary for the safety of lives and property? What do you think, Hamzat?
I think first is to recognize that government have failed. Government have failed from the national, the state, and the subnational level. That's the local government. Nigerian people have said they're tired of bad governance. They're hungry. They don't have jobs. The current inflation is making them witness starvation. And they're saying that they're going to converge themselves. See, what government failed to understand that this protest started before August 1st. And citizens gave them ample time, gave them notification that we're going to converge, and then we're going to undertake a position and march to various government leaders or political leaders' offices. Because when you look at it, executive governors in every state is the political leader and the leader of the state. What government should have done, and yes, I agree, our security agents cannot match, their manpower cannot match the numbers of people that are planning to go on the streets. Besides, they're overstretched, trying to ensure that they protect life and property, and with the level of insecurity we're facing across the country. Now, what government should have done, and I think, we need to understand that, we need to understand that it is governments and our political leaders that incited this protest to even get to this point that are now losing traction, and we're seeing mayhem on some of the streets. Look at the utterances of political leaders. Some of them were even boasting. Some of them were insulting citizens. Some of them were threatening citizens. And they're even making the job now very much difficult for our security agents. First, we don't even have trust. There's no trust between citizens and government institutions and politicians. And government lost a big opportunity to rebuilding back the trust. Why can't they come public and say, okay, if you're protesting, yes, in Lagos, you want to come to the government house or the government secretariat. I, as the governor, would receive you and address you. Look at what the governor of Rivers State did. Did you hear of any mayhem in Rivers State currently? No, because the governor recognized the right of citizens. And mind you, all of these elected political leaders, it is the citizens that elected them into office. And then overnight, you came up with a gag order, particularly in Abuja, saying the FCT minister saying, oh, they've confined protesters to the National Stadium. Why are you afraid to engage with the people you claim to represent? Why are you scared of them? Why are you afraid? Why can't you receive and listen to their demands? And the protesters are calling for dialogue, because when you have a rally or you have a protest or you converge, what you're doing is you want your voice to be heard. You want to take your demands to the doorstep of your political leader and also get response, get commitment, and have them follow through with actions. But we did not see this play out. Rather, they mobilized security agents, and it's really sad and unfortunate that they're using live ammunition on peaceful protesters. So the government has really failed. And yes, for citizens, and I think this is for them to ensure that they move in group and they don't allow any hoodlum infiltrate peaceful protesters. And come to think of it, and when we talk of hoodlums, when we talk of thugs or touts, these are political machineries that have been empowered, even much more empowered than state authorities like the police and other security outfits. These people have been empowered by politicians during elections. And that's why in Nigeria we have amplification. Today, small weapon and light arms. So you cannot blame peaceful protesters. It is the government, it is the politician who continue to use young people as instruments to perpetrate mayhem on peaceful everyday Nigerians.
I must, before I continue my next question, I have to put this out here that this is breaking. The Kano state government on Thursday today imposed a dusk till dawn curfew to enable the security agents quelled the widespread violence and looting that rocks the ancient city of Kano. Now, the nationwide protest is a city in a city of 20 million dwellers had kicked peacefully, with thousands of able-bodied citizens that poured into the streets in and around Kano. But so far, so good. We've seen footages of people looting the building there, as you can see on the scene. There are the scenes on your screen. Nigeria's a communication commission there, the National Industrial Park there. You see them
regarding that
looting
information,
properties there.
Also, there is an update to that information, Judith, that according to Leadership newspaper, Governor Ubasani denied imposing the curfew on the state. However, the curfew still stands at 4 p.m. across Nigeria for the end of the protest. So there's a bit of a piece of information that's coming from out of Kaduna State, but there were instances that might have perhaps caused this to be out there. So we'll be bringing you more information on that, definitive information on the state in Kaduna State regarding the curfew that has been imposed. However, it's to be noted that 4 p.m. is the restrictions that have been given regarding the time for protesters across Nigeria. Yes, Judith.
Now, well, Hamza, let me ask you, right, and I did ask the Dr. Lloyd earlier, one of our guests, and I have to ask you this. We've seen looting in Kano State, the footages that is now all over social media. We've seen, protesters being, the canisters of a tear gas. They were tear gassed out of there. And two things were certain. One of them was that they were canistered or they were tear gassed because they were supposed to go to the designated points. The second was because they said they didn't want them marching to points that were not designated, and they didn't want it to break into chaos. Now, two separate situations, and so it begs to ask the bigger question. Number one, should protesters be given designated points so that chaos doesn't break out, or is chaos inevitable when a change is dire or needed immediately?
Well, first, Nigerian people are peace-loving people. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu led the protest, did the government at that time give him a designated area to protest? Was he given a designated area? Okay, if you're saying that because you don't want the breakdown of law and order, you got a court injunction overnight. A lot of people did not even know. This court paper was not adequately served, and information did not get to the media in good time to say, okay, this is the designated area. If people or protesters in Abuja say, or citizens or indigents of Abuja say they want to use the Eagle Square, why are you limiting them from using the place? Why not say, okay, you want to use Eagle Square? Okay, please use it. Please do not destroy live property. And as the Minister of FCT, I would come and address you and collect your demands directly from you, and then even escalate it to the President. When they were in opposition, were they confined in a certain place? No. They led protests peacefully. They got security agencies to provide protection for them. So why can't they do the same thing today? Why can't they do the same thing? And it also tells you that the government is disconnected from the realities of the people. And this is the result when, as a government that represents the legitimate interests of the people, and there is no needs assessment, there are no plans, there are no policy communication, and there are incitement, there is no empathy, and there are statements to intimidate, because citizens would see that this thought injunction probably is also another intimidation strategy from the government side, because there's lack of trust. So government should have traded carefully, communicated their plans, listen to grievances, and also make commitment, but follow those commitments with action. Because before now, even here on News Central, I have called for calm, I've called for dialogue. But how is government even dialoguing? Because government said they should dialogue. Yesterday, there was a town hall meeting at the National Assembly. Connected Development was invited. I'm currently in the Northeast. So I'm stranded in the Northeast, actually, because flights are grounded. So I sent someone from my office to attend. But it was more of a gathering of government talking to themselves, giving goodwill message and statements. They didn't give enough room for young people to even react. And when it was time for that actual engagement and dialogue, most of the ministers, the speaker, who is the host, left the room. They left the hall for young people to talk to themselves. So when you say you want to lead a dialogue, you're not directly engaging the people. You're not talking to the people. The leader of the nation is mute. The people who hold principal positions are being insensitive with their statements. And I think they should take a cue, particularly government appointees. They should take a cue from the National Security Advisor, who have not made any inciting statements. But look at our Senate President, for crying out loud. Look at what he said. Look at the Minister of the FCT. Look at what he's saying. And these are leaders. These are supposed to be national leaders. So again, we'll continue to call for calm. And I want to urge every protesters, let's not be out there until dawn. Let us go back home. Let's go back home, and continue to engage, continue to document what are those grievances you want government to act upon. Because bad governance is affecting everyone. People can no longer put fuels in their cars. And I see no reason again why security agents would use force on peaceful protesters. This is not the way to go in Nigeria. We don't want a disruption of lives and property. We don't want our country to go up in flames. So leaders must tread carefully.
All right. Well, I need to also point this out, breaking first of all, for Kano State government. On Thursday, they've now imposed a dusk to dawn curfew to enable the security agents to quell the widespread violence and looting that rocked the ancient city of Kano, especially from those scenes that you saw there at the Nigeria Communications Commission. Also, what Mazino was pointing out was that the Kaduna state government as well has also imposed a 24-hour curfew. This is according to the leadership newspaper, and that's for Kaduna state following the looting of government properties. And so in any case, 4 p.m. is still the deadline given for protesters across the country. So two separate states. Kano state has called for a 24-hour curfew, as well as Kaduna state also calling for a 24-hour curfew. And both states, we have seen looting at these two states. Now, this is following the hashtag End Bad Governance. We switch gears now. We have Chike Trude, who's a public affairs analyst, and he joins us. He's still live with us on video chat. Chike, many thanks for staying with us here. You've had the submissions from Hamzat Lawal. He said that the government, or the president, has still not addressed the masses and the people, Nigerians, home and away, who want to see their president speak to them. And you must see, before the days leading up to this protest, the president has spoken to everyone, a call for dialogue with everyone, from the traditional rulers to the governors, the APC Governors Forum, as well as all the security chiefs, chief tent, plus as ministers as well, but not the Nigerian people. What is your take on this?
I think Hamzat talked about, has already talked about it, the total disconnect between those who govern and those who are governed. Absolutely. So that gives you an idea why they behave the way they behave and why they do the things that they do. The statements, like he also made reference to, of certain government functionaries, is evidence of this disconnection between those who lead and those who are led. And so, yes, the president speaking to the Nigerian people, look, their understanding of governance is different from what a lot of us see in terms of the responsibilities that political leaderships have towards those that they lead. And so again, you go back a bit really to the issue of elections and the determination of even votes of the people, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you believe that you are there, by the will of the people, definitely that the people, for you to be there, on the basis of the active participation of the people in the electoral process, then you realize that the people have powers, to determine your fate even in subsequent elections. Therefore, you will do your best at all times to make yourself, accessible to the people. But the reality is that across, West Africa in quasi-democracies, like we have in Nigeria and other parts of, the continent of Africa, the people themselves, political leadership of countries are determined, by the political elites. And so what you see really as a manifestation of the choice that people make.
But I have to cut you there because we have to go on a short break. My apologies, but we'll be back and we'll continue with that statement that you're trying to submit there. Do stay tuned. It's still a live coverage for the End Bad Governance protest across Nigeria, and we'll be bringing you more information after this break. We're instigated by authorities, perhaps maybe addressing the protesters wrongly. However, when it comes to responsibility for the protesters, they owe it to themselves for their safety. But regarding the operations of these different locations and the protests, and the fact that we have multiple organizations that are spearheading the protest, what's your take on how there can be a Congress operation throughout the country for the End Bad Governance protest?
No, you see, you cannot have the level of coordination and the level of actions that you're talking about. It's not possible. These are human beings with different experiences, operating within different geopolitical zones, with different contexts and circumstances. There are different levels or different degrees of hunger. Different governments is insulting, because ultimately, at the end of the day, in a local government that has perhaps about 1 million people, you are sending maybe 100 bags or 1,000, or maybe let's just say even 3,000 bags or 10,000 bags of rice to 1 million citizens. So it just gives you an idea that these people right now do not know what to do. They don't know what they are doing, and certainly their best is not. What their best effort is absolutely going nowhere, and that's why the hunger persists in the land.
Achike, yes, indeed, hunger indeed exists in the land. Thank you so much for your submission there. We want to switch gears now and bring updates from Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. We have Emmanuel Bogudu, our reporter, on standby. Emmanuel, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. What's the update where you're at? Where are you and what's going on?
Yes, right now I'm standing right on the border between the FCT and Nasarawa State. Yeah, behind me, just a stone throw, 2 steps back is Nasarawa State. In front of me is the FCT. Right here, security agencies are battling with miscreants, looters. Just some few minutes ago, this place was fully loaded with miscreants who are burning tires, looting plazas. Some even attempted to break into a bank just behind me. Now that caused a lot of commotion, and the security officials have to be, added, reinforced to chase away these miscreants away. So they haven't stopped the movement of vehicles. Just now that vehicles started coming out, and then a lot of reinforcement security is coming in. So Maraba is behind me, and Nyanya, the FCT. Maraba is in Nasarawa State, and Nyanya is in FCT. So the entire ambience here is very, very, threatening, and it's very tensed.
All right, Emmanuel, let's talk about the location itself specifically. Now, you just noted that Maraba is just behind you, and that is actually Nasarawa State, if I'm not mistaken, and Nyanya is Abuja. The demography of people who live in this area, most of them are actually from the city center inside of Abuja, who may perhaps seek cheaper housing and are living outside of Abuja, but can still make their way into the city for work early in the morning. Now, how has this affected the kind of protests or people that have come out for the protest itself, one? And then two, is this also a factor for the looting that has happened in that area?
Yes. It has affected all movements here. A lot of miscreants have taken advantage of the whole situation. Here, what is happening around Maraba and Nyanya axis is not even a case of protest. It's a case of a fight between security officials and some looters. They're just making it look as if it's protest, but it's not protest. A few security officials approached us in our bus and told us categorically clear that a young lady was robbed, her phone was collected, and they have been going around collecting people's phones and people's belongings. So that's just the situation. And within this axis, so they put in tire, make the whole place dark with smokes, make it so that they can have take the advantage of the situation and loot and rob unsuspecting citizens. So that is the difficulty that security officials are actually facing around this axis as I speak.
And Emmanuel, we did hear earlier, there was a rumor, now I don't know if this is true, but what about, besides Inyanya there and the city behind you, or rather the community behind you, in the main capital, we heard rumors of people who were attacked by miscreants and their phones stolen. Is this rumor true? Can you put a bit of speak to truth to these rumors?
Yeah, I spoke to a lot of the residents here. I even spoke to victims who actually said their belongings were stolen, were robbed. A lady I spoke to who just left, who doesn't want to speak on camera, said she lost her phone to these miscreants. You notice that a lot of videos going around. Just between Nyanya and Asokoro is trackable. And that's almost closer to the city center of Abuja. So that is where the miscreants were operating. And that's how, if you notice, police just opened tear gas on all of them just to disperse the place. If you look at this place used to be a very busy place. But just behind me, you notice that it's very, very scanty, because the police have actually made sure that everywhere is cleared, no protest is happening, so that people will not take advantage of the situation to rob people. So it's not a rumor. They have been attacking people here. The fire, there are videos of how they have been putting fire up and down, and a lot of people, the police were trying to put up the fire, and everywhere is calm. So everywhere is calm, and everyone was asked to go back to their houses, especially those in the Nasarawa State axis. They should not come out for now because there is fragile peace in this environment. So it's no rumor. People have been attacked, and we actually confirmed that people have been attacked, and police are just behind it. Police and the DSS have mounted a checkpoint behind, just by the border. That's the border saying, "Welcome to Nasarawa State." It's popularly called checkpoint. So that's where when they notice that then they suspect you, they call you and they search you and discover that if there's any sharp object in you, they allow you to go. But if they suspect you to be a criminal, they take you down there for interrogation.
Well, Emmanuel, thank you very much for bringing us the update on the situation there in Abuja, especially at the border just with Nasarawa State, the Nyanya border there. Thank you very much. I believe we still have our guests with us. Hamzat is still with us, and I'm going to be directing my next question to you, Hamzat Lawal, if you're still there. Now, regarding the absence or the body language or lack of such of the president in the entire system, the entire situation here, Hamzat, what do you think is missing regarding the president's body language? His refusal to come out and address the people, is this a factor for agitation for the protesters?
Yes, it is a factor for agitation because people are aggrieved, people are frustrated, and they expect their political leader to speak to them, to give them hope. You see, when people lose hope, then they will lose their ways and they would have nothing to protect and they would have nothing left. So, and it's a shame that at this point in our political history, the president is not engaging, he's not speaking. And when I say engaging, to the right people, to the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not some selected few who are mobilized to come and meet him at his comfort. Besides, when he was seeking election, he didn't stay in his comfort. He he traveled across the length and breadth of Nigeria to seek their support when they vote. And today, why is he not leaving that comfort to engage and speak to the Nigerian people, to communicate his plans, to give hope, to communicate his vision, and to match it with action? See, his cabinet has failed because if, for instance, his cabinet have worked because of their appointments, we won't be here. When you take, let's take some of these cabinet ministers and the ministries they lead. What have they done since their appointment into office? They became big men and big women in their SUVs. They don't pick their phone, they don't engage, and they want to be called excellency. Because if our ministers have functioned well, people would not be disaggrieved. If they've communicated, the government spokesperson, if they've communicated effectively, rather than insulting people, and rather than defending what does not make sense, if they are communicating and engaging people decisively, and also matching it with action, showing government action, showing citizens what government is undertaking. So you see, now let's even look at the budget. You see, you remove subsidy, but you bought SUV for lawmakers. Our Senate President made very inciting and very unpatriotic statement. You build a residence for your vice president, running into billions. I can go on and on, but in that budget, what is in it for the Nigerian people? People now pay out of pocket for healthcare. Today, we are experiencing growing high number of out-of-school children. I told you I'm in the Northeast. I did some outreach here. People cannot even pay 3,000 naira that covers the exam fee for their children. So now it's not only girls that are dropping out of school, even boys are dropping out of school, and government education is free. So the basic right that guarantees dignity, human dignity, is no longer there. Now people can no longer eat. Before now, over 60 million people go to bed with empty stomach. Now it's over 120 million people. So you're dealing with not only multidimensional poverty, you're dealing with extreme poverty. So, and then you're not engaging, you're not talking, and you continue to stay in your comfort and you form big man. So you see the Nigerian people have said, you know what, let us air these our grievance on the street. And you see, you were saying, and I like your correspondent, all of them are also alluding to the fact that the protesters are peaceful. It is the people who are hoodlums, who are thugs that are infiltrating. Also, mind you, let's look at data. Today, you have uncontrolled substance, hard drugs that have been abused. In short, if you go to political rallies during campaign season, you would see the thugs that are mobilized and you see them taking hard drugs. And you expect that these people who you've turned into a political machinery to cause mayhem and chaos would not want to also rise at this moment, knowing that our security agents are stretched and they don't have the manpower, they don't have the needed training and capacity and even equipment to engage and ensure the protections of lives and property. You see also the mistake that was done when some of these protesters came public and said, we are planning a procession on August 1st. We are going to converge and march peacefully. The politicians deployed their security machinery to intimidate, to harass, and even invited some of them. In short, some people were even detained. And you expect the Nigerian people to trust that you're going to act in meeting their aspiration and the promises you made when you were campaigning to occupy public office.
Now, Hamzat, they have made, the organizers, or rather protesters, the hashtag End Bad Governance. They have made 19 demands, and at the core of that of the grievances here is the removal of state subsidy, or rather petrol subsidy, which everyone, I mean, from analysts and everyone has said two of the policies that was introduced with this administration 1 year ago. Number one was fuel subsidy removal, and the second was the unification of the FX, which is, naira to the dollar, floating the naira, so to speak. And so with that has exacerbated what we now see as our economic climb here in Nigeria. But with 10 days of protests and asking for a reversal of the price of fuel, can this be enough to assuage, or better yet, to turn the tides of the economic climb that we see in Nigeria?
Again, you see why I say government have failed. You see, before now, everybody, even everyday Nigeria, agree that, subsidy regime must go because it was marred by corruption. Billions were being paid and the Nigerian people were not feeling it. They know that, people just bring documents and claim that they've supplied petroleum pump price, they've supplied PMS, and they're not, we know, so everybody believes that, yes, this corrupt subsidy regime must go. But the president said he was inspired, or he was, I've forgotten the actual word he used when he was giving his swearing-in speech the day he was sworn in. And he said subsidy is gone. And this is 365 days afterwards. No plan whatsoever being put in place. We saw a cabinet member, the person leading the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, caught up in a scandal, a corruption scandal, moving monies that are meant for poor people, that is supposed to help cushion the effect of removal of subsidy. We saw where they're moving it to cronies and personal accounts. Yes, she was suspended. No investigation, no prosecution, nothing. In short, there's even media propaganda and campaign to get her reinstated. Now, you devalued our currency, removing the purchasing power of everyday Nigeria. So today, yes, the government is now proud that they have signed a minimum wage bill into law, 70,000 naira. That's more like 10,000 naira of 4 years ago. How much can 70,000 naira cannot even guarantee decent meal for a family of 6 in today's Nigeria? So if the Nigerian people have come forward with their demand, it is for you to now respond and either accept their demands or respond decisively to their demands and give them specifics on what you intend to do and what actions would happen, so that one, they can measure those outcomes and actions. Two, they can also hold you to account and count down on those actions that you're going to take. But if you are a sitting duck for 365 days, your cabinet ministers cannot pinpoint what exactly they've achieved. There is no needs assessment. Your budget is not speaking to the aspiration of the Nigerian people. Mind you, they just also reviewed the budget and got this expedient approval from the National Assembly. A National Assembly, and because I always say without the National Assembly, this is not a democracy. A National Assembly that sees that the national anthem is much more important than dealing with issues of removal of subsidy, dealing with issues of unification of our currency FX market, also dealing with the issue of electricity tariff and the increase in transportation and inflation that we're currently grappling with even feeding. This National Assembly, we've seen that for everything the executive bring forward, it is expedient. They pass it without even public deliberation, no public hearing, nothing, no feedback, no constituency meeting. A lot of them, I was speaking to a few senators and they are citing insecurity. But I reminded them that when you were campaigning, you still went to your various constituencies. You went to different wards and local government. Was there no insecurity at that time? So you see, we have a political elite that is failing, and we have citizens rising. Because a lot of people forget that the highest office of the land is the office of the citizens. Because without the citizens, you would not have elected officials. These are the same people that came out en masse to cast their ballots. And I think this is a wake-up call for every class, the media class, civil society, political elite, even the business class. if we do not meet the aspiration of the people would rise. And when they rise, we would not be able to contain what would befall each and every one of us.
Well, like they say, back a dog up to a wall. When it can't go any further, it will bark or bite. Hamza, thank you very much. But while I'm keeping you, I want to turn to Chude now. Chude, if you're still there, let's play multiverse of madness here. Let's create another universe where it wasn't the AP that won the elections. Let's say perhaps maybe the LP or the PDP. Now, these parties, even before, while they were campaigning for the presidency, did already state that there would be removal of especially fuel subsidy. We don't know what other policies they might have they might have gone with. However, that was a thing that the parties always told during the manifesto, that there will be removal of fuel subsidies so that the corruption inside of that industry would be perhaps maybe quelled. Now, would we still have this situation with a protest over the bad governance that we're having in Nigeria? Was it another party that won the elections last year? What do you think, Chude?
Yeah, well, obviously there is no indication that if any other party had come to power, they would do exactly the same thing that had been done with this, party that's in power today. There is no indication that they will appoint exactly the same kind of people that are in power today that are taking decisions. There's also no indication that they will have the number of ministries that are in place today. So you cannot. It's not. The context might be the same in terms of being. The Nigerian polity being what it is. But when you have different actors, they will not act exactly the same way. They will act differently because they have different levels of experiences. They have different levels of temperament and different levels of understanding of the Nigerian situation, and perhaps different levels of sympathy for the citizens, and and there are also different levels of patriotism, of sense of patriotism and all that. So all of these issues are virtues that I've talked about would obviously be brought to bear by those who are heading these political parties. For instance, yes, there was a general agreement across board by the various political parties, the presidential candidates, that subsidy is bad, that subsidy needed to be removed. But how would they have removed the subsidy? And again, and the question you ask yourself is, would they have done it exactly the same way that this present government has done? How did the present government arrive at the issue of removing subsidy in one fell swoop? Obviously, there are different interpretations of what the president did during his inauguration speech that he had. We have been told that what was provided by the party in the speech that was read by the president was that the subsidy was going to be removed in phases, but perhaps carried away by the euphoria of the moment, the president, and perhaps also keenly interested in satisfying the international, multilateral organizations and certain countries, other countries too. He got carried away and announced the removal of subsidy because this is what those organizations had always said needed to happen. So what it meant is that he mortgaged the happiness of Nigerians in order to, make these foreigners, these foreign, institutions happy. And that is part of the problem that he's facing, because today it is not those foreign countries those foreign countries and the foreign institutions are not the ones coming to Nigeria to assuage the Nigerian people. It is him and his government that are making moves to try to assuage the Nigerian people. So the argument, I think, that the argument has been a bit mischievous. That, well, after all, the other political, presidential candidates for the other political parties also agreed, especially the PDP and the Labour Party, that they are going to remove subsidy. Therefore, it would have been the same. There's no way it would have been the same because, like I said, the actors are different and their temperaments and understanding of the socioeconomic dynamics of this country will not exactly be the same. So it is either going to be worse or it's not good, or it's going to be much better than what we're seeing today. And then again, the actors on ground, the corruption that have taken place, even since the inception of this administration, and some of the controversies that we have seen, would they have taken place exactly the way they took place? They're taking place, under this, the administration. So these are some of the issues. The vehicles that were bought, would the president, if he had emerged from another political party, have given, approval to the National Assembly to be able to do that? These are conjectures. These are just things that nobody knows, and they are not important anymore because they did not happen. And what is important is what is happening at the moment, today. It is very unfortunate, very, very unfortunate that we find ourselves in this situation just after the last administration, the last 8 years of last administration. We Nigerians felt that you cannot get any worse. But what they are seeing, the unprecedented situation, the price of basic foodstuff, a bag of rice selling for as much as 80,000, bag of beans and all that, yam completely out of, even for middle class. I would say middle class, but where really is the middle class today in this country?
Achike, very important question that you raised there. Achike, but I have to ask you, right, during your last submission, you sort of draw parallels with Marie Antoinette during the Revolution of France, Vive France, and it was let them eat cake. And in this situation in Nigeria, with every call for change, every call for hope, and cries of hunger is being met with give them rice. And so I have to ask this question: is it that our ruling class or the people and the cabinet, or the presidential cabinet, or the ministerial cabinet, whether appointed or elected, lack the solution skill or the creative thinking, or better yet, problem solving years ahead, or forward thinking, to critical thinking, more like, to be able to solve the situation without a bag of rice as the solution or the answer to everything? The cost of living, a bag of rice, food insecurity, a bag of rice, the price of fuel, a bag of rice. Let them eat rice.
Well, Marie Antoinette ne savait pas que le gâteau coûte plus cher que du pain. I will translate it. That's French, because you mentioned her. She did not know that cake costs more than costs far much more than bread. And so again, you're talking about our own political leaders. Yes, like you say, let them eat rice, because that is what, again, maybe because you might not blame them so much. I think maybe because, when people are talking about how bad things are in the country, rice is a staple food, and a lot of people, a lot of Nigerians, perhaps is the most popular food item in the country. And so that is why they are using it as a basis when you talk about food stuff. They let them eat rice. Don't also forget what was that lady in the last administration, what she did when she was trying to talk about the agricultural revolution in the country under the Buhari administration. Don't forget that she showed us, loads and loads, or is it pyramids of rice in Abuja. I wish I could remember her name now, but you know her name. And then they did a video, and we're talking about the miracle that had happened under the Buhari administration, pyramids, rice pyramids everywhere and all that. And then all of a sudden, after that, the rice disappeared. And then people were told again later that this rice were not produced in Nigeria. They just went and brought in foreign rice, packaged them, put them somewhere to give the impression that a miracle. I mean, how deceitful can a government get? Because eventually you're going to be found out, just as they were. I think that was Loretta Onochie. Eventually that government was found out that there was no rice. The rice disappeared overnight. And so people are hungry, it's about rice. But don't forget that when you eat too much rice, the way government is fixating on rice, I think they say too much of rice also causes a problem, a debilitating, sickness problem. Beriberi, I think if it is beriberi, that causes. And so it becomes, because you need to also complement it with other, basic, important food items. So it's not about rice.
Yeah,
even
but
the
do they have the foresight Do the ruling party, the cabinet, the ministers, the presidency, do they have the foresight to understand that every problem is not solved
it's
by
a good
right?
question you're asking. And you know, when I say it's, sometimes they come up with these harebrained ideas. You know, sometimes when I say they come with these harebrained ideas, I'm not, you know, I have looked at it and I try to be sober about, about how I address these issues. But the ideas are harebrained. If somebody says, for instance, okay, look, we can make Nigerians happy with this number of bags of rice, that's when they will realize that bags of rice is not, you know, the problem of Nigerians, or it's not the only problem of Nigerians. Nigerians are talking generally about inflation in the country that has also made rice, out of the reach of the common man, that has also made beans and other basic ingredients that even go with rice out of the reach of the common man and all that. So, and the question you're asking is a very important question, but it all has to do with how government understands policy. Who are those that come up with policy? Because when a policy is, you come up with a policy, it is simply an indication that something has gone wrong somewhere and that you need to address this, thing that has gone wrong. And you can only address it, through a policy. And so, and when you are coming up with this policy, you bring in people, stakeholders, people who are supposed to benefit from this, policy itself. You bring in other people who might have also a negative, position with regards to that policy. And then you listen to all sides. And on the basis of that, you are able to synthesize, to come up with a synthesis, how you're going to go about it. And even when it has come, you have implemented, passed it into law, for instance, you realize somewhere along the line that there are issues associated with this policy that were not even envisaged as at the time you were working, you are formulating it. Then that means you have to go back to the drawing board to also make adjustments. These are the things that are happening. So when they are coming up with all of these things they are talking about, me, like the question you're asking me, how do they sit down to talk about it? Do they bring in people, stakeholders who have an understanding of the issues at stake? Do they bring in people, the direct stakeholders who are going to benefit from this in the very first place and all that? Did you hear them out? Did you listen to them? Did they participate in the process? Or just because you think that because you're government, even though we have generally acknowledged that you are far from the people. Now, if you're far from the people, that means that you do not understand the pains that the people are feeling. And that's why I think your other guest, Hamza, was talking about certain statements by the political leadership that tells you that they don't even understand what is going on with the people that they are governing. When a senator of the Federal Republic says, well, they can, if they want, let them go and protest. We will sit in our house eating our food. He forgets, that the people who are on the streets have no food to eat. He has food to eat. And that is the problem that Marie Antoinette also faced in France. Bread, the most basic food item at that time was bread. It was not available. The most expensive food then that was eaten in the palaces by kings and lords and royalty was cake. And she said, okay, if the people do not have bread that is basic to them, they give them cake that is meant for them.
We seem to have lost his audio there.
I wanted to say something.
Many people heard it, they got angry. And of course, the rest they say is history. Of course, she had her head hanging on a stick. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we do not want that to happen in Nigeria. We want a more responsive and responsible political leadership in the country. We want a country that is progressive, a country that is peaceful and that is stable. But we also know that it cannot happen if you cannot guarantee people their basic meal, and some of those things that are essential for their survival, because Nigerians are finding themselves in an existential, they have an existential issue. It's about life and death for them. So government officials need to sit up to understand that. And look, the reality is this. I just want to make this point, because you've talked severally about this protest lasting for about 10 days. It doesn't matter whether it lasts for 10 days or not. I don't think it's going to last for 10 days, but it doesn't matter whether it's 1 day, whether it's 2 days. The issue is that there's a problem on ground and that these problems have to be addressed. Because if they don't have, the government can gloat. For instance, the protest might not have, gone the way government officials, fear that it will go, then the next thing they do, because they're insensitive to the plight of people, is for them to begin to gloat over it.
All right.
And make
statements
against the people. That will not work.
Let's give the opportunity now to Hamza to treat the question. But Mizuno,
yes, I have. First, I wanted to say something about that. Puts a whole new meaning to let them be protesting. We'll be eating.
We'll be eating
rice. But Hamza Lawal, if you're still there, my next question is directed to you now. Still playing multiverses of madness here. In the next few hours or days, perhaps over the weekend, if the president chooses to address the protesters, address Nigerians, what could he say that could change the direction of things? What could he say that could make the youths go back home? Hamza. Hamza, are you there?
Hamza seems to be having a bit of glitch with his network there. If you're just tuning in, you're watching the hashtag #EndBadGovernance protest live coverage, as we have been talking to our guest analysts here joining us live via video chat. We were speaking with Achike Trude, he's a public affairs analyst, earlier on, giving us his own submission on the economic situation in Nigeria and Nigeria government's approach to alleviating the economic hardship of Nigerians by a bag of rice as a solution oftentimes. And we also have Amzat Lawal, who's the founder and also an activist for Code. That's a connected development. Unfortunately, information reaching us is that we have lost Hamzat Lawal. But Chike, this question there would have to be directed to you.
Please do let us know. What do you think the president could say to quell everything that's happening currently with the protests?
The president has been saying a lot of things. He's not been talking to Nigerians directly. He's been talking to Nigerians through his people, through his statesmen. And they are supposed to be the ears of the president, the eyes of the president and all that. And so when they talk to and that's why you journalists, when you hear a statement from the spokesperson of spokespersons of the president, you say the president said this, because the president has given them permission to speak. And they have to speak in tandem with the thinking of the president. But beyond that, again, is the fact that Nigerians did not elect the spokesman of the president, the spokespersons of the president. They elected the president. And so, once in a while, the president needs to come to the people, especially in periods of serious national malaise, to talk to the people, to give the people assurances. But whether whatever the president says will address the needs of the people, again, like you said, 9-point demand by the protesters. That I think part of those demands would be the reversal of the fuel subsidy. The president, that would be the most important anyway. The president is not going to do that, because that will set off another chain, reaction, where you have this, where the president set out from the very beginning, from what people have said, to please the international community. How does he go back to this again? And they're looking at the very serious and negative financial situation in this country, which they themselves are not even helping by their lifestyle. So are they going to read? So if you want to, but if you want to bring, look, the whole issue, the whole crisis, I want to look at it in two ways. One is food, the prices of food, general inflation that has also affected the prices of food in the country. Two is the issue of transportation has become, exceedingly prohibitive. Then, of course, the exchange rate, that also makes a lot of things difficult and impossible in terms of, things you have to import into the country, since Nigeria is an import-dependent country. So virtually everything that we use in Nigeria is imported, and that has a way of also increasing astronomically the prices of these things. So can the president address these three things, especially the issue of fuel subsidy? If he addresses the issue of fuel subsidy, then he addresses the issue of inflation. He addresses the issue of cost of food. He addresses the issue of transportation. It's as simple as that. But then again, when he does that, of course, like I said, there'll be a chain reaction. Other aspects of the economy, according to them, will be affected. So the president is not going to address these issues. And as long as he doesn't address these issues, I don't see how the people can be assuaged. So perhaps we can say in a way that the president has been caught in a situation of between the devil and the deep blue sea.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
That is taken, that he takes it will have serious consequences.
Oh, unfortunately, I was going to redirect this question to Hamzat, who I hear that we have back now. Hamzat, I'm not sure if you heard the question, but I'm going to be quick with it so we can have your own submission here. What can the president say in the next few days or few hours that can change the course of things regarding the protests? Hamzat, please.
Just be honest. For once, let's have a president who is honest. Tell us if there's a problem. This is the problem. This is what they will do. And this is the time it will take. You see, Nigerians are peace-loving, but Nigerians are peace-loving, but we're also patient people. We've shown tenacity. We've shown that, we can give you time, but just be honest with us. Talk to us, and don't talk to us as if, you have disregard for us. Because Nigerians also have a culture of respect. So show us respect. Show us some level of decency that, we have rights, you have responsibility towards us as you serve us, but just be honest, say the truth, say things as they are. Imagine that on the first day of this protest, the first thing the government is trying to control is network. The network has been terrible since today. Not to talk a few days ago that a lot of people's lines were bad. For no just cause. Is this a militarized democracy? So we want our president to come and address us and tell us, what are his challenges? How much time does he need? What is he going to do? And how much time will it take? Give the Nigerian people something to look forward to so that they will remain peaceful, they will give you time, and they will continue to remain resilient because we're truly resilient people. No society will accept everything that have been thrown to us and remain this calm and peaceful.
Well, Hamzat, that submission, I have to point to peaceful protests, but most importantly, the situation that happened in Kaduna and Kano and some of the northeastern states. As much as we're seeing some protests looking peaceful, we must talk about the incidents we have seen in Kaduna and in Kano, the looting of properties that we've seen, as well as reports that we cannot confirm at this time of a shooting as well, and a protester who died, or an individual who died from the shootout as well. We've also seen properties of the government and also individuals as well being looted by the protesters. Do you think this, and now there's now been a curfew, a 24-hour curfew caused by the Kano state governor and the Kaduna state governor respectively. Do you see this shedding a bad light on the overall outcome of this protest for the hashtag End Bad Governance? Do you see this shedding a bad light altogether? It will now be already heavily policed. Will it be even more policed, especially in the northeast and northern part of the country?
How many people can you police? How many people can you arrest? If there were good governance, would Nigerian people resort to going on the street peacefully to protest? Now let's look at indicators. Let's look at data now. When you look at data of poverty, data of unemployment, when you look at data of hunger, it is this state you are calling that have the highest indicators. These are the states that have the highest indicators. So I'm not surprised that this breakdown of law and order in some of these states that is being perpetrated by political talks and hoodlums that have been empowered before now by political actors. Because let's call it what it is, So you can't put this on the organizers and the peaceful protesters. No, the government must take responsibility. Why are the young people unemployed? Why do we have hoodlums? Why do we have touts and thugs? How did they get armed? Light weapon? Who bought it for them? Who gave them hard drugs? Let the government answer.
Now, we understand that earlier today in Kaduna, some of the protesters went into the office of the governor of Kaduna State to protest. The situation got very messy as the police seem to have had difficulty controlling the crowd of protesters. Now, the story ended up in a possible loss of life of a young man that was alleged to have been shot by the police. Now, let's watch this video package from the incident from earlier today.
Yeah, but why are we seeing their prescription in your phone? Still automatically in my phone. From TikTok. Don't worry. Yes, from TikTok. It's automatically. Investigation. It's secret, sir. No problem. And just listen, don't worry. Everybody knows that these people are violent. I have said this. I have said this several times. Don't worry, sir. Nobody stops from why are you like someone that wants to sit down? I'm well educated, sir. I'm well educated.
kuna wilson ne abin da kawai na yi ba shi ba ba masu batun ne yanzu kan ina nawa Abdullahi kai da tura maka wannan yayi classes. Let's go.
As you can see, how these people turn to violence, and we already informed you that we have a lot of bad elements, criminals, armed robbers among them. You can see this one. We arrest him with a live ammunition. Live ammunition. What are you using it for?
Sorry, this one is not. I'm not.
It's not ammunition.
It's ammunition. I'm not.
Okay, it's okay. Okay, no problem. You can see the reason why we receive intelligence information that some people are trying to dress like us and to join the protesters so that they can do whatsoever they want to. That is why you can see this one. We arrest him with dissent. You can see something you have never noticed in our arms, and that is the major reason why you see most of our policemen here, almost all those that are participating in the operation, you see them with a red dissent on their arms. That is why you can see him now with a police camouflage. You see another one with scissors, you see, and this one. Look at that knife.
I see it in the ground.
Okay, you saw it on the ground. Then you pick it. No problem. It's part of the protesters. Thank you.
Don't kill one police, don't kill one protesters. Nigerian police, they don't kill one peaceful protesters. Nigerian police, don't kill one peaceful protesters. For government house, Nigerian police.
Scenes that you're seeing there is the police in Kaduna stage during the #EndBadGovernance protest, where they apprehended some individuals who they are now alleging to be miscreants and criminals who disguised as police part of officials and to cause harm and chaos, anarchy, and also to steal and cause harm to the protesters. We heard that the police made some arrests as well, and the arrests led to some of the protesters becoming more aggressive, and that's what you see on the scenes there on that we just played for you. Now, Hamzat, let me come to you for my next question, and I want to talk solutions, and hopefully we can talk solutions as well as a Chike if you're still with us. But Hamzat, before this administration took the mantle and to continue the baton and to continue with administration, I must point this out and put this on the table that government is continuum. It must be in continuum. Now, we saw the stats out of the north, multi-dimensional poverty, 137 million Nigerians in poverty in a country that is over 200 million Nigerians. We also noted from that stats that a majority of that number were households in the north. And we also know that the names on the social register for the cash transfer scheme are mostly of northerners as well. The out of school numbers is in the north. The number of underage pregnancy and marriage also in the north. Food insecurity in the north. Unknown gunmen killings as well as terrorism in the north as well. And now we've seen the scenes from Kaduna, Maiduguri, and as well as Kano, and also Abuja as well, from our last correspondent there, Emmanuel. Very, very sad situation. And I must have to ask the question, should there be a special approach to the north? And I know some viewers are going to watch this and say, oh no, but other geopolitical zones have suffered because of the much attention given to the north. But is it enough? Should there be a special forward-thinking, strategic movement in terms of addressing the issues of the north? And how best can this be addressed? Education is a problem. The line of poverty seems to be increasing with the north, and the ruling class is a completely different thing. The elite is a completely different thing. One has to ask, what is the best way to solve the problem in the north?
We can't isolate it. We cannot isolate region around it. You see, the problem is there's a unification in the problem. I've been to the 36 states. In short, I've not just the capital. I've been to over 600 local governments in this country, from the south, north, east, and west. And you see, the third thing is now we're creating Regional Development Commission. So what is now the role of different government MDs? Why are we regionalizing Development Commission? What has NDDC, what have they achieved? Northeast Development Commission, a decade of insurgency, what have they achieved? You made mention of conditional cash transfer. It's not cash transfer, it's cash payments, because it didn't move from government account to the beneficiary account. It was heap of naira cash that was counted with when camera was there, gave a few people. When the cameras left, they moved it and took it back to Abuja. So it's not conditional cash transfer, it's cash payments, and not everything was disbursed. If we deal with corruption, endemic corruption, then the solutions, we can start, getting the solutions right. If you look at some of the demands, they're calling for reform. You see, it is a shame that even the president have not even addressed some of the ills in the electoral process. I had thought that Mr. President would even acknowledge that we needed an electoral reform, that some of the electoral process that even brought him into office, there was some misgiving. And this is what President Umar Musa Yar'Adua, with best memory, this is what he said. He acknowledged that, there were some flaws, and he worked to, at that time, reform the Electoral Act. I was thinking President Tinubu would lead that charge and say, you know what, even if I've won these elections, there was some issues, I would want to lead a reform so that as we go into 2027, we would not have any cause to continue to approach the judiciary, for instance. If you also look at some of the demands of the protesters, they're talking about reducing the cost of governance. This democracy is costing us a lot of money. And when you also talk to an average politician, they'll tell you that they've spent a lot in on their campaign, and a lot of them will tell you, I literally bought my way into this public office. So what do you expect me to do first? So we need to look at how we can reduce the cost of governance so that people would see public office as a place to come and serve, because politics itself is about service to people and humanity. So I think for us to get a solution that is sustainable, so it's not just a one-off solution, we cannot isolate the problem. So if we now see it from the lens of it's a northern problem, when the insurgency started in the northeast, we saw it as a northeast problem, and we isolated them. And now they now migrated, and we call them cattle rustlers first, and then you say bandit, that is now in the northwest, and we're still isolating it before you know. And that's why Abuja is heavily populated, because the only safe haven we have now, everybody only feels safe. Is it kidnapping that is not happening in the southeast or in the southwest? Or there's a high level of insecurity. So we cannot isolate the problem. All we have to do is to ensure that government at the subnational level, local government at the state level are now actionable, and also the national government. We must also ensure that power goes back to the people. Yes, we now say that the Supreme Court has ruled that funds should be sent directly to local government accounts, but we must restructure, and it must be holistic. You see, today police are saying that, they cannot control this crowd. Why don't we have state police? Why does the commissioner of police have to wait for Abuja? Why do they have to wait for Abuja? A lot of governors, and if you look at the statement from the Kano state governor, he said that he got intelligent
that this would happen. He has called security agencies to act, that none of them acted because they get their order from Abuja. So a lot of them say they are as chief security officers of their state. They cannot fully even give out orders to the security agencies. If we do not restructure, then we cannot move forward. Why would we spend over half of our wealth in Abuja? Why? Why are states not viable? Why are they not producing and exporting? Why is there no value that we can even share as states that brings effects and attract investors to our country? So, my sister, we cannot isolate the problems. You know, this is cross-cutting, and this is a national emergency that we must tackle heads on. But as we do that, we must be honest, because the most important ingredient is trust. And for you to achieve trust is to be honest and open, and also collect feedback and make sure your decisions are centered around data.
All right. Tell you what, Hamzat, I'm so sorry.
Citizen-centered.
Thank you very much, Hamzat. I'm so sorry, but I have to cut you. But we have footage of what's happening in Kaduna right now regarding the shooting of a protester, a boy, actually, not a protester. Let's take this for a minute, and then we'll be back to continue this conversation, if you do not mind, as we continue to bring you details of everything that's happening across the country regarding the End Bad Governance protest that's happening now. This excerpt is from Kaduna regarding the shooting. Let's take that now.
We are at government house. Nigerian police and soldiers don't kill one of our protesters. They don't kill one of peaceful protesters. They don't shoot him. Nigerian police at government house. Don't kill one police officer.
All right, while this is going on, we want to beg for viewers' discretion, as this involves the shooting of the young person in Kaduna State, which we spoke about from earlier. So please, once again, viewers' discretion is advised as you view this video.
Right now, we are at government house. Nigerian police and soldiers don't kill one of our protesters. They don't kill one of peaceful protesters. They don't shoot him. Nigerian police.
And the sound that we've heard across the nation has been a call to end bad governance, a call for change, a call for an end to corruption, an end to nepotism, an end to insecurity, an end to the situation of things, and a new beginning for Nigerians. Is the hashtag End Bad Governance protest that has scattered the entirety of Nigeria, from Kaduna to Kano to Abuja to Jos, the capital of Plateau State, to Delta, and also here at the commercial hub of Nigeria, Lagos State, the Center for Excellence. And we have been giving you live update from all of our correspondents and reporters across the nation, and also all the way from South Africa as well, as Nigerians are calling for a change in governance. They are calling for more conscious governing and a new beginning. Good governance is what they are asking for with the hashtag End Bad Governance. And conversations within the hour has been to that effect. What would that change look like? Is the protest is enough? Can it be enough? And also the approach of the governance or the government and the security agencies to the protesters as well, and also the body language of the presidency as well has been the conversation, and those conversations will continue inside of this hour this evening. We're being joined on video chat. By the way, we have two guests joining us. Before earlier, we had Hamzat Lawal, who is the founder and an activist as well as the founder of Connected Development. We also had Achike Chidu, who is Trudy, I beg your pardon, who is a public affairs analyst. And so joining us now to continue this conversation is Fidelis Ete. He is the former National Vice President, NLC. He joins us via video chat. And we also have Moses Abolade. He's a peace building consultant. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now, Mr. Fidelis, I'm going to come to you with our first question this morning, or rather this evening. And this is regarding, well, let's talk about the fact that the NLC did not want to be a part of this protest. Now, I know that you're the former president, so it's not that we're asking your take on their present stance. However, what's your take on them, well, not withdrawing, but standing apart from the protest? And do you think that the protest might have had more weight if they were behind it or if they weren't behind it? I think that we have lost Fidelis, but we'll try and get him back. But while we have Moses here, Shegun Moses, please, if you don't mind, if you can maybe respond to that. Do you think that the NLC's absence or presence might have been a factor for how big the event could have been?
Well, I'll be speaking from a peace-building perspective and human security perspective.
Please.
I think in a time like this, we need to have unified voice. And it's quite not a good thing that we have so much division even before this protest. The allusion that came to mind when I was doing an introspection around all this is what happened to the Tower of Babel in the scripture. So even God himself knows that unity has an impact on how he might be overthrown, and we have to use that to divide the people. I mean, if people have different languages, they cannot come together, and that has been our maldoing over the years, and I think that's our major problem. I don't think at this point we have to have such division, though it's also understandable that it's political. Though I won't want to speak for NLC and their union, but I think at this point, these concerns are general. They affect almost everybody, even the rich in the contest. They are also willing. So it's surprising to see that a pullback, but everybody have right to either decide to be part of a move or a change or based on their own analysis, and we also need to respect that. As a peace builder or as a consultant in this space, I think what we need to do more at this point for no matter the actors or the stakeholders involved in crisis like this, we need to come together. We only have two major categorization of actors in this. And those are in our own balance. It's either you're oppressed or you are the oppressor. Staying in between, there might not be that latitude for you to just stay and say I'm indifferent at this point, because it's either you are insensitive to what is going on around you, or you are not incapable of making a decision that will favor you or your generation to come. No matter the stand we want to stand, for us as a peace builder, we are looking at how we can break the cycle of violence, or cycle of injustice in the long term sustainably. And that's my position on that. The more divided we are, the more problematic it will be for us to make that change happen, which means that we are just either supporting the oppressors or you are there for those who are oppressed. So either way, you will know where you stand at the long term. So that's just it. However, it will have been a very great way if all stakeholders, either you are in any classification of the society you might find yourself, if we can come together and say, oh, this is our common issue, dealing with the issue now, not because that's the first principle of negotiation. And I think protesters need to understand these things. In negotiation, you need all hands on deck, and you must separate the people from the issue to be able to get forward.
We're going to put a pin in
it
just for a minute, because we have to take a very short break. But please do hold that thought, because when we get back, you'll be continuing, and maybe we'll be asking one or two other questions regarding some of the things you've just mentioned. Let's do that break now. We'll be back with more broadcasts here from everything happening across the nation regarding the End Bad Governance protests.
We continue our broadcast on the hashtag End Bad Governance protest that has continued across the country. We understand that Borno, as well as Kano and Kaduna, a 24-hour curfew has been imposed in those states, and there was violence noted in Borno, Abuja, Kano, Kaduna, and we also showed you footages of a young man that was killed and on the ground. I was gunned down on the ground there at the protest in Kaduna State. Now, we had our guest earlier on where we're speaking to Moses Abolade. He is a peace-building consultant, and we're talking to him about the protests from today. Now, you said you wanted to talk from the angle of peace peace building, especially, and you're a consultant in that angle, right? We have seen the lack of, although they have called on dialogue by the presidency and other stakeholders of the government, but we have not seen dialogue from the president to Nigerians. We have not seen the president address, the nation, address its citizenry or the citizens, or address young people. We have not seen that. And this is not the first time with this administration. In fact, the administration before this was the same. We didn't see that address as well when it was needed. And so when we speak of peace, although this has been somewhat of a peaceful protest, I would say fairly a peaceful protest, at least 80% in some of the states, Lagos State, for example, Jos as well, other states across the nation has seen some level of peacefulness. But with the body language from the presidency, as well as the security agencies, it begs to ask a question. What exactly constitutes a peaceful protest? And don't that body language sort of instigates or insinuates that any type of protest is already deemed unpeaceful?
Okay, I would like to unpack the question first before I look at the first one, which is the body language of the president and the ruling class, so to say. That is something that I have been an advocate against from day one. And this is it. In peace building and in conflict transformation, which is a bit more explicit in this understanding, you look at conflict situation or conflict context, not at this stage. Let's look at it. What are the root causes? Even before election, how expressive are these people? And if you don't have people who are not expressive even before they are given this leadership make you become powerful, and sometimes power might make you not to even think of putting yourself in the shoes of others, which we take out empathy. So the thing is that our leaders is not when we get into this space or these issues that we start becoming disappointed. I think in conflict statement, expectations brings about disappointment, and disappointment brings about conflict, especially unwarranted conflict. We can manage this if you have actually dealt with it before elections. How communicative or how expressive are these people before they get the power and the force? So for me as a peace builder, I don't look at the triggering or the effect right now. What we are seeing is an aftermath of so many things in the past. So there are indicators that show that this particular government might not be expressive. We know how they did issues around debate before they got into this stage. So it would be wrong for me as a peace builder, because my role is to understand how system works. Indicators that shows that people will become the potentiality of people's positionality, which will determine if people will become something at the end of the day, if they will be expressive at the end of the day. So I never expected that they would be expressive at the moment, because indicators before my own analysis before the election and afterwards shows that these people are not expressive. And if you are not expressive, if you cannot communicate, so many problems will happen. And those are the things we are expressing now. So that's the first one. And where there is no effective communication, there is no peace. When there cannot be peace in the real sense of it. And peace in this sense, we say peace is not just the negative of, when we're talking about violence, we need to even discuss it further. So peace in our context should be the presence of justice, security, and development, which are things that if we start talking about, we might spend days on. But going back to your question about how peaceful has it been? For me, it's going on well. And to determine what is peaceful is not based on either the resistance was based on armed engagement or harmful resistance. So we look at it in peace building parlance, we pay attention to the root causes of the violence. Now, when you say there are hoodlums of people that are hijacking the protest, those are blank statements. And the statements are not really true because even in the scheme of conflict transformation, that means a system created this set of people. Now you are also trying to divide these people further to say there are violent protesters. Who make the violent protesters? Who make non-violent protesters? If you have paid attention to structures of peace building, like we have it through education, if you have educated this mind, will they be violent today? So we look at the structures that enable people to either be violent-minded in a long term or non-violent in a long term. And it's important that we know that if you did not educate a majority, don't expect too much from that majority. That's simple. So in the balance of peace building, we are more concerned about the sustainable structures that enable what you now later see. These ones are triggers. And I can tell you that this is just a tip of iceberg based on my own analysis of what it will turn to if we don't manage it properly. And managing it properly means that everybody must be, especially from the angle of the government, they must be expressive, though that is an expectation that might be taken too far, because I know that based on my analysis, they will not come. Even if they speak, I'm not really concerned about you speaking. I'm more concerned about you listening. Active listening is more important in peace building than speaking. So when people say, oh, we want the president to speak about what? The question is, what are you speaking to? Are you speaking to action and to change things? Or are you just speaking because you just want people to leave you and do your things and continue the kind of the status quo? So if you're speaking to change or speaking to action, we can say you're talking. But first, listen. Active listening is one of the most important tools of communication in peace building. And if they are interested, they need to listen first before talking.
All right, so Abolade, I like to use practical examples, and in this case, the most practical example and relative one would be the instance from Kenya and Ruto and the youth, which seems to be the same thing we're going through right now. Now, there were instances where it was perhaps maybe there could have been dialogue in that instance, and we also note that the President Ruto himself, acceded to so many of the demands of the youth. Now, that's peacekeeping, or peace building rather, isn't it? In the Nigerian instance, what would this be made of? When would this dialogue, or could this dialogue be? You talked about active listening. Is the presidency not actively listening now? And is it too late for them to actively listen, like you say?
Okay, first, with your instance about what happened in Kenya, I can tell you that even Kenya's, the governance in Kenya, the contest, they still listen more than Nigeria. Based on my own analysis of what happened, coincidentally, I was in Kenya during that protest, and for the Global Peace Leadership Conference, and I can tell you that one way or the other, the message was well received, though there was a lot of insensitivity on that government, but they were still speaking. And there was still a sense of listening. He was joining spaces. He was still there's still this feeling of we are seeing the president. The question right now is, can you say you know what the president is doing right now, despite all what is going on? Can we say that? So when we are looking at issues around dialogue, when should dialogue happen? In peace building, the best stage is latent stage. That stage was when all this is brewing, when we have a lot of indicators. This is a problem of cause and effect. During the inaugural speech of the president, removing subsidy without, so to say, seemingly proper consultation seems to be one of the major ways of people not listening. And when there is a feedback from the people, there will have been proper consultation. Oh, we made this. Can we have an expression that speaks to those issues? And let people feel like this is for us, or is it against us? So when people perceive that decisions and policies are carried out either without them or passively with some few minorities to decide their fate, then it results into this. Now, the later stage should have been the stage where people, when the ruling class should have listened to the people. And they're not listening shows that they are not good leaders. Because the characteristics of a good leader is that you can listen, you can engage people, and instead of that, the world is now is becoming simpler for free flow of information, and that was lacking. We have social media that the presidents can take advantage of, but you try not to avoid those platforms and not use that to your advantage. Where these people, where the majority of Nigerians are, is a disservice to yourself as a leader, and that's a problem we faced. So if it's about dialogue, when you're looking at those processes, be getting feedback. And in peace building, we are very concerned about monitoring and evaluation of the process. When you say something, get what people are saying, go back to the drawing board, have a common ground, not just you just having meetings or committees without moving ground. You must move ground because you are not sitting there just for yourself. You're sitting there because you represent a majority. While the people might not understand your principle, where you are taking them, you must also be able to meet them at the center where it will be a win-win situation and there will be compromise on both sides. And that is how to do a proper dialogue. And when you don't have that, definitely what you are having now is just a tip of the iceberg. So the time it's not too late to start dialoguing. It's not too late to start doing this. But it's also erroneous. Let me also say this. When people start seeing that you are moving in a very wrong direction, you are trying to raise people to defend you instead of accepting what people are saying, and you are defensive instead of you being objective, then you are not operating on dialogue. And sustainable peace will be very far. Those are my point. Those are my few views on that.
Well, you spoke about the fact that it's not too late to embrace dialogue, but what would dialogue look like in itself? There's so much noise now currently with the protests on, and we're hearing of shootings and lootings going on here and there, and curfews as well. Did we have to wait that long before we start to perhaps maybe suggest dialogue? Does it seem like a fair dialogue at that point? Is that good governance? Is that good dialogue? What do you think, Abolade?
So thank you very much. So at this point, it's just like a conflict situation. We are getting to the climax of it. We are not there yet, but I can still say, depending on how this dynamic is going, anything can still happen. So presently, the first thing is to start listening. Instead of being defensive at the face of or using state machineries against the people you're leading, listen to them, ensure that the protesters are protected, ensure that after all this, you are paying attention to details of what is going on, not trying to shut the people down, but try to listen. And that's the first point in dialogue. The first point in dialogue is not even in speaking or setting up meetings. The first point in dialogue is listening to all this. Can you bring all the information together? What are the demands? What are the notes on different platforms? Which one can we start first? The people need a solution kind of dialogue. You need to address the issues. Those are the first way to even let people listen. So when you come out and say, we've listened to what you're saying, either through a general broadcast or something. However, these are the things we can do per now. We might not be able to do 100% of this, but we can do 50% of this. And we are working on also looking inward into the running of the state to see how we can do A, B, C. Then people will also, Nigerians are resilient and they are adaptive and they are reasonable. Then you can now say we can have a committee on this, a committee on that. Then you start something that will be generic, more of like a referendum that can actually transform the stakeholders first. And I'm a fan of changing the stakeholders first. Then we can now deal with issues. Then from the issues, we can deal with our legal structure, because the legal system we are operating on is a major basic, is a basic concern in the agitation of the people, and we must deal with that. So when people see that you are taking sensitive and serious actions, then people will we want to listen to you. But when you are trying to be defensive, it's just a normal thing. You are having a conversation with somebody and somebody is agitated. And what you want to do is to shut the person down. Definitely there will be a reprisal. So the first thing is to listen. Don't be objective. It's criticism. You are representing the people. Listen to the people. And that is where dialogue starts. Until that, it might be a long ride to justice.
It's no secret that the Nigerian government, whether civilian or democratic or military junta in and of itself, have not had have struggled with critique or even dissent. It's no secret. We've seen this over time. History is there for posterity's sake. But I'm very curious to ask you this, Moses Abolade. We've seen the government and this time security agencies allocate points for convergence and demonstration and protest. They have said they don't want people marching or demonstrating on the streets. There are located or allocated spots to do that across the country. Also, the time to begin and end the protest. What are your thoughts on this?
First, I was just smiling all through when I had those injunctions and all. First, I was also so surprised initially that this protest, I was saying to someone that this is one of the most too planned a protest for me. And I have my reasons for saying this because I'm more of a person that believes in organic form of engaging. But it's also is something that we should applaud the Nigerian people and people who have come out today to protest, because I was not even expecting such massive engagement, but they did it. And it's something to really applaud Nigerians for. However, in peace building and international security balance, we call things just. We have just laws and we have unjust laws. There are laws that are made or they are done. The fact that they are laws doesn't mean they are just. And it's so funny when I saw those injunctions and those. Engagement from the court around where protesters should protest. When we are protesting because we want the person to feel the pain of it. It might not be a violent way of you showing it, but no matter the resistance you're doing, the first thing is that the other person must feel it that you are resisting. So if the person that you are trying to resist is giving you the jurisdiction of where to stay and where not to stay, and I think that's an unjust engagement from my own analysis as a peace builder, because the right of the person being determined by the perceived, either perceived or real oppressor, it changed the entire game. So we need to review these legal issues. It is totally against international laws. It's totally against how humans should express themselves. If a particular location is so sacred that you don't want that place to be defiled, I'm trying to look for words now because it's not coming, and you think they should not get there, why do the people who are being affected by those sacred places ensure or did not pay attention to this crisis getting to this stage? I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So if you have to say, for instance, there's a place you cannot go to protest, that's an infringement on human rights of people. If that place is so sacred, then use those places to speak for justice, not the bad people that you are made to become victims, to now give them barricade on where or how to behave after you make them who they are. So it's important we put those things in the right perspective. And it is also a need, is a pointer that our judiciary need more work. In a place that a politician can be so strong to influence justice and influence electoral issues, because those are the critical points for us in peace building. We need to strengthen our institution. SDG goal, Sustainable Development Goal 16 is saying peace, justice, and strong institution. It's saying that the institution should be stronger than the people, and somebody should not come out and do something against the will of the people. So if the institutions are not stronger and people can actually outrun those institutions, then we're in problem. So for me, it's a no-no, and it is an unjust situation. And it also indicates that we need to reform the judiciary system. We need a lot of reforms around the electoral system. Those are even the the main issues. And I really want the protesters to also have a unified understanding of what we should be looking at. We should be looking at fundamental issues. Issues like electoral reforms, issues like judiciary reforms, issues that will take sustainability into the next level, that we will not end up recycling this same set of stakeholders that will make us to be protesting all the time.
Now, Abolade, may I suggest the word you were looking for is desecration of a place? But then, let's talk about the unfortunate instance that has happened this afternoon now. A young man has been gunned down, and in peace building, like you have been advocating for since, what's the next step for the government in this case? Now, we hear that it was a perhaps bullet from the police that perhaps gunned this man down, and this was at the government house, Kaduna. Now, since this has gotten to this stage now, what must the government do to address this issue so it doesn't agitate even more the protest and escalate?
So in peace building, the question is about, it's not really about what has happened. It's about why did it happen in the first place? Why should we lose people in a protest in the first place? Why should state agencies or mercenaries use live rounds in such context? And this is not the first time it's happening. If we do not deal with the why, it will repeat itself to other people. And my major concern is that how will this not even affect other people in the future? So, because for anybody who is affected now through this protest, or people who have been affected in the past, this is a circle that is going and it will keep going. But we need to deal with this issue of police brutality. We need a lot of change when it comes to those reforms, and that's what I'm saying. What punishment and what justice will be measured to either anybody find wanting? There should be an investigation on who shot that. And if we not deal with that, the circle will continue. That's my major concern. The life of the person, and we should also, take us to understand, how do we value human life in Nigeria? How do we actually value human life? If we don't value humans and see that one soul can be the next president, so then we can now put a value on that life. What if it's the next Attorney General that is being shot there? So if we don't start seeing it like that, we will not punish the people who make it like that. And we need to stand against such arbitrary actions. So punishment to the people that did that, and it ought to be made public. And it also have to go into the way we address issues like this. So it's not about what has happened, it's about why did it happen in the first place, and we need to deal with it. If we do not stop it, it will continue. And my major work and what I've been working on is how can we stop this circle of violence so that it will not continue. Every time we will write press statement to grieve the lost ones and it continue like that, we start another protest. We need to find out who have done that, and justice should be done against that. Because peace is about justice, as I said. If there's no justice, there's no peace. If there's no security, there's no peace. If there's no development, there's no peace. That's our elements and principles very dearly. We are in a long thing. We are in a long journey.
Well, a long journey indeed. I mean, I have to ask about let's look at the events of the past and now as well. And I have to bring this, I'm sorry. The hashtag NSAS protest, we saw what unfolded from the beginning to the very end, and up until now, the product or the byproduct from that and the events that have taken place after the hashtag NSAS protest. 4 years ago, it happened. 4 years after the ECOWAS Community Court have now found Nigeria guilty for human rights abuses to the protesters, and also fined to pay about 10 million to each of the defendants, or rather, those on the suit. And so I have to ask, given that a situation where it had to go to a higher court outside of Nigeria, for the Nigerian government to have to set up and address what had happened at the hashtag NSAS protest. If this devolve, again, no one's asking for this, nobody wants this. From what we've seen all through today, it's been 80%, very, very peaceful. But if this dissolves and become something else. Do you see the government taking accountability for their actions?
Thank you very much. I think it's still the same response to the fact that where we are coming from, how many responsibilities has this government taken since before, during, and where we are right now in their governing system. The problem is that we expect too much and we not study indicators. In peace building, we study patterns. So when Mr. Hay do something once, does it the other time, we might say, oh, it's an accident. And the third time like that, then we study it and turn it to a pattern to be able to deal and manage such relationship. And in that context, bring that example home to what we are saying right now. In previous years, we have not seen people take responsibilities for their action in different forums and or for different conflict contexts, especially when it has to do with lives of people and all that. We just make it into numbers. And it's so sad that our institutions are so weak that we have to have external institutions tell us what to do and how to do it right. So it also shows how weak we are when it comes to the institutions, judiciary, and judiciary is so essential. It should be the last hope of the masses, and not just that, it should be a symbol of excellence. And if we are having these issues around just laws or unjust laws, and people can actually control, or they are powerful than the institutions, then we're in a mess. So that is why I will going back to the. Can you hear me?
I hate to cut you, but we'll have to put a pin on it as we're going for a very short break. When we come back, we'll continue with your submission there to that question. You're watching the hashtag End Bad Governance protest live coverage here from our studios in Lagos, Nigeria, the capital or the commercial capital of Nigeria. My name is Judith Atibi. My guest, or rather, Mizuno Appeal, is here with me.
Did you hear that?
Studio.
Goodbye.